Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Common Collective Podcast. Today's episode is going to be in the books as probably one of my favorite episodes. Today's guest, not only a guest, but the new host, along with myself, of the Common Collective Podcast is going to be Coach JQ, Jeff Cabral. He's a good friend of mine, an amazing guy. We hope that you like this episode. We'll see you at the end. All right. Welcome to the Common Collective Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. We have an amazing episode. This is actually going to be a pretty exciting episode, in my opinion, because my guest today is actually going to be co-hosting our episodes with us. So, JQ, Jeff Cabral, my brother from another mother, he is going to be our guest today, and like I said, be a ongoing co-host. So, Jeff, welcome to the Common Collective Podcast.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me, man. This is a huge honor. I look forward to a lot of different things. There's no specific things, but I think that's the most exciting part. It's just this thing can kind of get rooted and go any which direction for, I guess,
It's like a magical
better or
unicorn.
worse.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the most exciting part.
So today, what we're going to be talking about is a couple of different items. This is going to be kind of just like a free for all, open discussion with Jeff and I. But little backstory. So this sounds a little weird, but Jeff and I met on Facebook. So basically, a couple of years ago, I was going to be getting into wildland firefighting. Save that story for another time. Jumped on a couple of Facebook groups for wildland firefighters and came across Jeff. And I guess he, at the time, right? You were looking to jump into fighting wildfires and stuff like that. And I think you posted something that I commented on about like, where do I get started or something like that. And I just told you like my kind of path,
Mhm.
how I actually got hired on with the Forest Service and whatever, to see if that might help you out. And you were in Santa Clarita at that time?
Close enough. I was in West Covina at the time.
West Covina, that's right.
Yeah, I was clawing my way into the fire industry and at the same time trying to claw my way out of Southern California.
I
So,
know, I know. It's no bueno here. I know. People tell me all the time. So sorry, I'm still like doing my caffeine intake for the day.
oh, bro,
Um,
same here, man. I got my mug right here. That was one of the things I had to gather before starting this podcast.
the essentials.
Yo, yeah, fuel, brain
Yeah.
fuel.
So yeah, so that's how Jeff and I kind of like hooked up, and like we just kind of like chatted back and forth, and then all of a sudden, like I pretty much knew almost instantly that Jeff was like kind of the on the same level as I was, and I think that's what kind of was like there's that, you know, there's personality types that people are just like drawn to you, and Jeff's kind of got one of those personalities. And so fast forward to 2 years later and some change, we just hooked up like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, hey dude, do you want to do this podcast with me? Like, for me, like initially, like I wanted Jeff to come on and be a guest and talk about the stuff we're going to talk about today, but all of a sudden I was just like, dude, there's a lot of stuff that you have that people should hear. And do you want to do this podcast with me? And he was like, yeah, dude. And so now we're here.
Yeah, man, that's pretty awesome. I didn't even know anyone really paid attention online, so that's deeply humbling, bro. But I don't know. I think it's just part of what's ingrained in me. I mean, I've been a coach for um, 7+ years, and I've coached children and adults, and I've always loved that being mentored type of thing when I was growing up, being part of a team sport. So it's just kind of I felt like I'm in a position where I can give back, I guess. I don't know. It's just that cycle, right? You learn, you apply, and you teach, I guess.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody what kind of a coach you are.
Oh man, it's not really an official title, but I guess there's a small community of us in the fitness industry that will. Uh, I mean, it might sound elitist, but I'm not trying to be like that, or we're not trying to be like that. But we're more movement coaches per se, and there's not really a certification that you can go out there and be like a quote unquote movement coach. But on paper, I'm a CrossFit coach. Been a CrossFit coach for a little over 7 years, working on my level 3. Um, and so, yeah, man, I just coach human movement, human mechanics in both sport and functional movement. And largely, my philosophy in the fitness industry has been more catered towards movement quality. So, uh, I've been able to adapt my coaching skill to pretty much help anybody, any age range, any fitness capacity to elevate their lifestyle or their quality of life. So I've helped old couples just wanting to get on the dance floor and dance, all night at a party or something, to young kids who want to be competitive athletes in whatever sport, basketball, soccer, baseball, and anyone else in between who just wants to be comfortable in whatever career they're in, that they stay energetic and they stay physically healthy when they go home to their families and children and whatnot. So I've had the privilege of being able to coach a wide gamut of I guess necessities in the community.
What drew you to that specific niche as far as like being a movement coach? What was it about it that like really kind of like pulled you in?
Um well, I've always tried to be a gym rat, Uh, in high school, we had gym class or whatever, like the dumbbell curls, the whatever bench press, and I was largely mostly introduced to it because I was on a basketball team all the way up through college, and even after college, and recreational leagues and all that, and just that team aspect of being able to work out, essentially suffer together, succeed together type of thing. Um, so after I graduated college, that's when kind of physical activity slows down, trying to figure out your career and whatnot. And I did IT for nearly 10 years. Five of that, or four of that, was I started with Apple, and then I went freelance. And during that time, I kind of missed the whole human aspect of living day to day. Interacting with technology and computers and mobile devices and stuff got really boring. And so I was like, you know what? I want to serve my community somehow, some way. And I actually applied for LA County Sheriff and LAPD. And in that process, I was like, okay, well, I need to get in better physical shape. And my cousin turned me into CrossFit. Well, he was like, hey, man, like, we should both try to do CrossFit. You're trying to do this, and I'm trying to do that. And I was like, all right, cool. So long story short, I ended up starting it and sticking with it, and he never really started.
Well, that's the way it goes sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
somebody like drops that like seed, and then like it grows for some, and some it gets thrown in the thorns.
yeah, man. So I got into it. I enjoyed it. The first thing I really loved about it, number one, was specifically in CrossFit, was the coaching. And coming from, I played basketball growing up, so and I always loved and thrived in a coach athlete type of relationship. So having the coach again and having a mentor and guide me was totally awesome, and I thrived under those conditions, like telling me what I'm doing wrong and what I should be doing, etc. And the more I did it, um, I fell in love with the whole community aspect of it too, and so I had a team vibe. right? Suffer together, succeed together. And then it brought me back to my old days of competing in basketball. And then 1 year later, it kind of grew into where, man, these coaches, they're actually serving their community and they're not really putting their lives in grave danger as I was looking forward to doing in law enforcement. And so I looked into getting certified, and dude, never turned back, man. 7 years later, or almost eight, yeah, eight now, actually, over 7.5 years. And I was like, oh man, this is pretty awesome. So I was able to serve my community that way. And then, yeah, man, I'm still doing it, still striving it. It's trying to bridge gaps in certain industries with the fitness industry. And that's where my career is at right now.
What made you want to get into fire?
So after doing CrossFit for, over 7 years, I was like, okay, well, I'm helping these people get better in their careers or get better in their day to day lives. And what am I doing? I'm spending every day in the gym doing this and trying to, lift heavier, get stronger, faster, whatever. And I'm like, what am I applying it to? More coaching. I'm like, it's cool. I love it. But I kind of wanted to put my body somewhere physical where I can actually um, do something and serve physically in that sense. I don't know if that makes sense to other people, but um, I'm 38 years old, so it could also be called midlife crisis.
Yeah, I hear when you get to our age that kind of hits. I just turned 37, so like waiting for it to make its appearance.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I'm pushing 40, and honestly, I remember crystal clear the day I was, how old was I? 12, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to be a teenager. And I'm like, boom, I'm pushing 40. What? Um,
It creeps, man. It creeps.
yeah, so I got, so, um, gosh, uh, so yeah, I came to this point where, man, I want to do more. I didn't really want to leave coaching per se, but I just kind of wanted to do something bigger than my local community. And if I were to rewind back to my high school days, I actually was looking forward to serving in the military. And a lot of that was because of Maverick from Top Gun. I wanted to be fighter pilot in the
There you go.
Navy.
That's a classic, man.
Yeah,
Everybody has
it's like every other guy's, I guess, goal. At least
I'll
back in
tell
the
you what,
'80s. Uh,
anytime, I don't care what, if I'm driving my Hyundai Accent or I'm driving my Mazda CX-5, whatever, I don't care what vehicle I'm in. If Kenny
oh
Loggins
yeah,
Danger Zone comes on, that pedal is all the way to the floor and beyond, dude. Like,
oh
and
yeah.
I'm in a fighter jet. I don't care what the speed limit is. Like that's what that song does.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh man, I don't know if you ride motorcycles, but I'd put some headphones in and play that song and go up Angeles Crest, and like I think two wheels is the closest thing you can get to flying while you're on the ground.
Yeah,
Um,
the missus doesn't like motorcycles, so I
oh,
don't
got it.
know. I don't know if that dream is ever. Maybe that's going to be my midlife crisis. I don't know. Maybe.
Trying to get on two wheels.
Yeah, like maybe a beach cruiser or maybe a moped or something. I don't know, but maybe. Like we'll
Oh
see.
man, hey, I'm all for it, dude. There's certain ways to do it responsibly, and oh man, that could be a whole nother podcast too. Oh man,
The
but
first time
so
I ever
but
got
anyway, I
on.
couldn't I couldn't live my dream of serving in the military because I mean I'm Filipino, strict Asian parents. I love them to death. I'm not holding this against them at all. But it was that whole like, oh, that's too dangerous. You become a doctor, engineer, or a lawyer, right? It's like aim
Right.
for your seat. So and I figured at, I don't know, 36 years old, hey, you know what? I can do whatever I want now. And I want to go ahead and serve my country some way. And so down in LA, I actually have a small business. We're actually still developing it. I have a business partner, and it's in the fitness industry. And the goal is to get people outdoors, training outdoors instead of getting people in another box to lift and train. Uh, we ended up partnering with a zipline company. Um, and because we've acquired each other's partnership, they were like, "Hey, we would love for you to come do our training, be a zipline guide, so you know how it goes, and take customers up with us, and so you know what the whole experience is, so that when you try to pitch it to people and whatnot, you have some experience talking about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally down. Oh man, dude, I had such a great time. My first time ever being out in the woods, let alone working. And I was standing in a platform, I don't know, about 100 feet up from the ground, in a tree, and just nature all around. This is in Wrightwood, by the way. It's about an hour away from LA. And I was just looking around. I'm like, man, I learned what a red-tailed hawk is. And I learned three different species of trees. It was all part of the training, and I was like, "Holy crap, dude! This is freaking cool." I'm working right now, and I'm out in the woods. So,
Dude, Wrightwood is gorgeous, man. I
oh,
haven't been up there in
beautiful.
like years, but like there's a like when I was living with my dad and my stepmom and step siblings and stuff at the time, I think my stepmom had like a relative that had a cabin up there, and we went and stayed up in that cabin for I think it was probably close to a week,
Hmm.
and I'll never forget it, man. Like we were in walking distance from this like little cabin. Like I don't know if it was called Snow White's house, but it was like almost like an miniature, and it had like, it was
Nice.
just kind of just kind of like a landmark, I guess, where people would go, and it's like, oh, cool, you know.
Hmm.
But like it was so cool, just like being in a cabin that was made out of wood. There's something about like that authenticity of that, I guess. But
Yeah.
it was amazing up there, and like I was like, I probably was like 11 or something, so that was like a while ago.
Oh,
But
nice.
like that memory stood out, and like we watched this ridiculously horrible version of Peter Pan. It
Mm.
might have been like the one that Julie Andrews played Peter Pan or something like that. Like we
Mm.
watched it
Hmm.
like over and over and over for
Nice.
like dude, that was like all that we had for entertainment unless we wanted to go outside. But yeah, Wrightwood is sick.
Yeah, dude. Like my wife and I would frequent over there just because we go visit that zipline place, and we love that little quaint neighborhood. People are freaking nice. Uh, we considered actually moving out there if we couldn't get out of California. That would be one of the
Oh really?
first
That was
things.
the secondary.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting that you say that there's something about just being out in the woods or being in a cabin. Well, that was the one of the biggest thrusts why we were trying to acquire some outdoor land was just green space and blue space training. It actually does some things to your hormones. It does something organically in your system without getting too technical. But that was yeah, that's definitely a big push that we're trying to do, and that was a big reason why we were out there. But so I loved it so much that
Is it more
um,
because of like the vitamin D that you get from the sun, or is it
that's
like
just
other things too?
other things, man. Other things. You have some hormone receptors that responds totally different when you're in nature. That's why like when you go out on a hike, you can't describe it, right? You just kind of come back and you're like, "Oh man, that was so refreshing." Like, "What did you do?" Like, "Oh, I just walked through the woods." It's like, "Well, you can take a walk anywhere else, but it just gives you a different feeling, right?" So,
Yeah, well, I noticed like anytime I go hiking, because I do really love hiking. Anytime I can get a chance and go, um, the thing that I like the most is the way that my lungs feel.
oh yeah.
Like when you're totally spent, but like all that like fresh air has just like permeated every inch of your lungs. Oh
Uh-huh.
man, like that's like that to breathe like that is like
Yeah.
unlike anything else.
Yeah, it's insane what oxygen does to your body.
Right,
especially when
right, right.
especially when you're living in the city. It's insane. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, dude, I just loved. I just a whole different sense of me kind of popped out when I was standing on that platform, um, doing zip lining. And so I went home, dude, that day after I finished training, and I searched for wildland professions, careers, or whatever. And dude, believe it or not, I was like, wildland firefighter. What's that? I did not know anything about wildland firefighters. I just thought a firefighter was a firefighter was a firefighter, like
Yep.
big red engine and and whatever. It's like, okay, and
I had no clue either. Like honestly, like anytime that you hear about wildfire, like the one thing that I think about, I guess not now so much, but was Cal Fire. I was
uh-huh.
like, oh, those guys will take care of it. Like I had no
Yeah.
clue that there was like this whole other realm of, like total manly, like lumberjack, like firefighter guy crews that would go
Yeah.
out there. Like, dude, there's no other like the nickname Hot Shots
Mhm.
could not be more perfect for the guys that go out and like are like the initial crews that go out. Like that is the perfect name for these guys,
Mhm.
and they are
Yeah.
some of the most brutal, burly guys that like put their bodies through some like intense stuff. Like when I PT'd with a lot of guys
Yeah.
on my crew, dude, I'm dying. Like I'm not, I'm nowhere near in shape at all. And just for city life, even commuting life and working from home, like I'm just not in the best of shape, right?
Yeah.
But like you go out there and watch these guys just like crank this out. Like I'm like, dude, I don't. When in life am I going to need to hold a push up this long? Like, just let me do my 25 and let's move on to the next activity. So,
Right. Yeah, man, and I saw that and I was like, "Oh, heck yeah." So, dude, I submitted my application for over 200 different locations up and down the whole West Coast.
that's I remember you telling me that. That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, that's how bad I wanted out, man. That's how bad I wanted change. So, and I'm now here in Southern Oregon, dude. It's just awesome.
So, quick off topic. We talked about this the other day. So, like, I recently got into archery,
Uh-huh.
and I don't. I feel very uncomfortable with calling myself an art. I don't know what to call myself because I found out I'm a really horrible shot. I found out that I don't know completely what I'm doing as much as I thought I did initially,
It
and
looks
I have.
simple on video, right?
Yeah, dude, like you just pull the string back and let it go. Like I was
Yeah.
like, I can do that. Like
Nope.
that's simple mechanics to me. Yeah, no. So I'm clearly not making the best decisions already on day one out of the gate. So I don't know what to call myself, but like I'm gonna get into archery and I'm gonna try to become proficient. But
Heck yeah.
so I was talking to you the other day about like going hunting, right?
Mhm.
And like if anything, if we get to link up in your state, um, what do you think is better, Eastern Oregon or Western Oregon? What are you
Oh
closer
man.
to?
Well, that's gonna be an easy question for two reasons. Number one, I live in Western Oregon.
Nice. Okay.
And number two, I've never been to Eastern, so I'd say Western Oregon is better. But I hear a lot of good, beautiful things about Eastern Oregon. However, I know the landscape's totally different. I think it's more high desert. Um,
Yeah, I had no clue Oregon had
yeah,
desert.
yeah, I didn't know either. So it's interesting. Well, I lived in Seattle for a year on the western side, so just 20 minutes above Seattle, and that was my first introduction into the Pacific Northwest, and totally fell in love with it. And um, but anyway, I what I learned about Seattle, and I guess it's the same for Oregon, or this I guess this whole Pacific Northwest region is it's very very unique, where it actually has all. Um, now I don't know if I'm saying this right or not, but I think all four ecosystems. I don't know if there's four or eight or something, but you get like the desert, you get the rainforest, you get the Mediterranean. You know what I mean? Like you get those very unique um, weather patterns, I guess, or climate patterns in such a small area of the United States, let alone the whole world, right? And I think so. I believe that's one of the most special things about the Pacific Northwest is because of that variety of different ecosystems here, which is astounding. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, dude. I just read the other night because I'm trying to like figure out like how much it's gonna cost to actually like go on a hunt.
Oh
And
yeah, dude. I read that. I was like, oh man, that's insane. Yeah, out of
it is.
residence hunting
Yes.
fees is
It's
Ridiculous.
insane. 'Cause you don't just get like you have to buy not just a tag, but you also have to get the license. And
Uh-huh.
like I literally was running the figures, and like the cheapest place that I found so far, I haven't looked into Nevada yet. But
Uh-huh.
what I really want to go hunting for is like big game. So like elk.
Oh.
I'm totally on the elk train. I've never had it, but everybody is saying like it's awesome and whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking at like the figures here, and like Utah seems to be the cheapest.
Oh.
And with the round trip, because I was trying to find like a location so I could like figure out
Mm-hmm.
like okay, how much fuel am I going to use and whatever. So fuel round trip to Pine Valley, Utah, and back to Orange, plus the hunting license and the tag. I'm looking at like $550 just for that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but the cool thing is like I'm going through like this a checklist to find out like what else I should bring and stuff like that, and I'm pretty sure I have like 75 to 80% of what I need,
Okay.
um, which is going to be awesome because I don't have that much more money to accumulate to pay for the other stuff that I'm missing, and then
Right.
the actual trip. And so with like my part-time gig, like it's going to be really easy because usually, I mean, I can make $500 a shot for because like I do these certifications for
Uh-huh.
work from home agents. I train them on working on different clients that my company acquires, and so they're usually like two weeks long, Monday through Friday, and they're like 2 to 3 hour certification sessions each day, and then like I make a cool $550 check, which is great because that's like all extra money. Like that's how I bought my bow, and yeah, dude. So like I could be ready as far as like equipment, like in probably like another month or so. But I'm like after yesterday, after I finally got my bow like tuned and dialed in and everything, and I was shooting yesterday. No, not ready at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to come up to Oregon because I hear like that's like really good hunting grounds.
Yeah, I mean, I hear too. I've never gone hunting before either, so that's another reason why I wanted to move out and be in this type of environment was to get my hand into hunting and dude, I've never even gone fishing. I
Really?
remember, yeah, dude, I've never done any of that stuff. Man, I when I moved here last year, I did my first week on the job with Grayback. We were doing project work, right, stacking sticks, and man, for that week, I think that's the most amount of time I've ever spent in the woods compared to my whole lifetime.
Holy smokes! The
Yeah,
woods are the
dude. I
best.
mean, just to, like from a different perspective, I remember, I was told the job description while while waiting on a fire call, we'll be doing project work out in the woods. Man, I went to REI and took a navigation course because I was like, oh man, just in case I get lost in the woods, I need to find my way through and so I don't get lost and whatnot. That's the mindset I was in. Like I didn't know what I was getting into, but it's awesome. I love it. It's fun.
That's rad, dude. Yeah, I honestly like. I used to be really into like the dream was like, dude, I want a house on the beach. Like, I want
Mhm.
to be like right next to the ocean. I want to like open up my sliding glass door and like
Uh-huh.
walk out on sand and have like the water be right there. Because I love the beach. Like, there's something about the sound of waves that just like that white noise
Mhm.
drowning everything else out. Like
Oh yeah.
my mind could never be clearer than that.
Oh yeah.
And so I think after being a resident of Orange County and going to the beaches here, like as I grew up, like maybe I got more cynical or just more old and crotchety. I don't know, but like there's people everywhere, and I'm like, God, get me out of here! Like I hate. And so like there's no parking, like everything's just like jam
Oh
packed. And
yeah.
so like I don't like the beaches down here, but I think something about when I started, I think really getting into to hiking. Um, there's something about the woods that was like, I really, 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 really would love to have a plot of land, build, a house in the middle of the trees, and just exist and
Hmm.
live off the land. Like self sufficiency really has been a big topic in my mind for
Uh-huh.
quite some time. Like when I started getting into prepping and survival and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
I was just like, dude, if I could do that, that would be amazing. Like I would be all about that. But
Yeah, man. No, I feel you, dude. Like moving out here, um, seeing that as part of actual necessity, just flipped my world upside down. I mean, I grew up in LA, so I grew up around convenience, right? Um, Everything was just right there. You didn't really have to worry about the dark because the streets were lit up. I didn't realize how streets or how cities are so lit up during the night.
light pollution, man, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And I remember I drove up here to visit the area and do my timber felling seminar. It night fell, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's dark!" Like, how am I how am I gonna get anywhere and drive? Like, yeah, it's insane. Like, oh my gosh, my headlights they're not bright enough. Oh, like tripping. And now I freaking love it when it's dark. It's dark. When it's night, it's night. It's time to chill, slow down, and get ready for bed. You know. And I was gonna say too, the beautiful part about Western Oregon is because I'm usually a beach kind of guy too. My wife, however, she's more of like river, mountain, lake. Well, here in Western Oregon, Southwestern Oregon, as we explore the area and get to know the place better, dude, it's an awesome clash of both of our worlds colliding, and it's very attainable to have a piece of property in the woods, but also be a 20-minute drive, if not even get the ocean as your view from your living room.
Dude, that's
Yeah,
rad.
right. And so you got the ocean in front of you, and you can have property right next to a stream or right next to a river with your property on a mountain. And I was like, okay, all right, this is awesome. And that's an understatement too, and the lake right behind you in your backyard too. So
If I had a dream board, which I don't, but if I did, you would literally just describe what would be on it. Like that is ultimate right there. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, it's funny, in LA, uh I mean, mileage wise, at least from where I live, the ocean was, oh, I don't know, less than 10 miles away, maybe, if that. But it would take, what, a couple hours to get there for traffic and parking. And over here, the ocean is about 50 to 60 miles away, but it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to get there. So it's actually quote unquote closer or shorter to get to the beach. And the beaches here, oh my gosh, dude. Gold Beach. I think it's called Gold Beach. Um, Beautiful, dude. Oh my gosh.
See,
I'm gonna have to
now you
share
can't
some
be
pictures
telling
with
me
you.
this
But
because now I'm gonna have to. After we're done with this episode, like I'm gonna be like hounding my wife, babe. We gotta move to Oregon. We gotta go find it. We gotta go find. We gotta go find our dream space. Like now she's gonna be
oh
hearing about
man,
this for a week.
I'll send you pictures, man. And I am low key trying to recruit people up here.
Dude, trust me. If anything like seriously goes down, like I'm heading up. I'm heading up north, man, for sure.
Oh, dude, yeah, man. And this particular part of Southern Oregon, um, and speaking of like, the whole being self-sustainable type of thing too, and it's I'm learning the area and the geography too, and yeah, so the what I'm learning is these road systems, the mountain road systems by BLM and Forest Service, apparently, you can take these road systems and it spiderwebs all the way up to Northern Oregon, all the way up to Portland. And and there's a lot of different ways to get out of here too, in case the town, whatever, experiences some sort of emergency. I mean, there's a ton of roads you can get out towards the ocean, ton of roads going down towards back into California, uh, going east to Eastern Oregon, Idaho. It's awesome. It's pretty cool. And that was the thing too, like with this whole pandemic. A buddy of mine down here and my wife were, we were looking at the whole situation down in LA. If anything happens and people need to get out of there, you only have like a few main arteries. Like you have the 10 going east, you have the 5 going north and south, and that's pretty much it. And you guys are pretty much trapped against the ocean. And multiply that with the population over there. Good grief, man. Like either people aren't getting out or it's going to take a really long time to evacuate that area.
Well, dude, I like honestly, I I think it's in the city. Your your chances dramatically decrease of actually making it out somewhere, to get out, especially when you're in like places like LA and even
Hmm.
lots of places in Orange County, um, especially when you're around like the main freeways. Um,
Yeah.
and those are not going to be, every road is just going to be jam packed because it's like way overpopulated, and that's the
Oh
only
yeah.
concern that I have is like, I mean, it sounds pretty twisted, but like I think I could do pretty decent in The Walking Dead. Like if that was real life, like I would be like, okay, like I can move this car out of the way and just like make my own way, nobody around, small group of people sticking together. Like I
Yeah.
could totally
Yeah.
be on board for that. But like, that the first initial like hit of a disaster, like I think that's my main worry. Like where I'm at right now, like I like where we're at. It's kind of cool because when my grandparents actually bought this house,
Uh-huh.
they had it moved from like I think it was like Fountain Valley or Fullerton. So they
Uh-huh.
split it into two pieces. They bought this plot of land that was literally on, everything was orange groves. It was like two
Oh,
houses that were
nice.
built, and
Uh-huh.
there's like I have one neighbor on my left, and nobody. Well, now it's developed, but initially there was nobody else, right? And so
Yeah.
our backyard is sunken in. So
Oh,
we have
okay.
this like wall that's probably like 6 foot, maybe 5.5, and over it the ground's much higher, but it was all orange groves when I was little, and now it's like $1 million homes behind me, and so we're
Wow.
so sucked into, like, we have a long driveway, and like it's very secluded. Like across the street we have this big huge reservoir,
Oh, nice.
and it's almost like lakefront property. Like it's a poor man's lake. Nobody can go in there or anything like that. But like, I open up my curtains and I'm in my robe and I have my mug and I'm like, lake. That's pretty much what I get from nature, right? But like, I think we're in a pretty good spot. Like, if it was
Yeah.
like a bug in, kind of situation, I think it'd work
Yeah.
out pretty good. But
Like
bugging
right
out,
now during the quarantine.
dude, like I'm living my best life right now, and I hate using that phrase, but like I work
Right?
from home. Yeah, dude, I work from home like all the time. Like I've been training for this kind of lifestyle my entire, like, the last 6 years, and it has been I get things delivered to my house, just about anything that I want. I get, I have all my electronics. I work from home. This is great. I don't have to deal with anybody. Like, it's just my daughter and my wife, and those are my like two of my most favorite people in the entire world. So like I said, I'm living my best life. Like I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah. No, man. Yeah, I know
But
that's this
homeschooling,
quarantine has.
like,
Uh-huh.
we'll say that for another episode. But homeschooling has got me like climbing the walls. Like I can't. I was not meant to be.
Oh
Shout out
yeah.
to all the teachers out there like that deal with kids. Like,
Yeah.
like my wife sent me this. She sent me this meme last night that was great. I mean, it was so freaking perfect. It said, "So now that homeschooling is over, now we're focusing on anger management," or something like.
Dude, that's funny.
Yeah,
For
dude,
sure.
that is like my life, right? And then there's this other one that I saw today. Um, Somebody had like done like that stuff that you put on car windows when you're writing,
Uh-huh.
messages. It said, Um, you lied. My child. You lied about telling me that my child was.
Good student.
No. That they were a pleasure to have in class. You lied to me or something like that. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah. Dude, homeschooling is ridiculous. Thankfully,
Oh man.
my kid is great. Like she's so wicked smart on like a
Yeah.
laptop. Like
Yeah.
I don't have to help her too much unless like it's maybe like reading a couple of words or like she doesn't get the instructions or stuff. But like she's got her thing and she'll click and she'll log in and she's like I'm blown away at like how much she does at 6 on a computer without my help anymore. So she
Yeah,
makes it
man. It's
easy.
crazy. It's generation. It's just totally different generation. Uh, I mean, when we were growing up at that age, we were making slingshots out of twigs. You ask a kid these days, like, what's that? What's a slingshot?
Yeah, exactly. Like, dude, it like there's something inside that like stirs, and I get angry when people like, oh yeah, that the Beatles, man, like that. Somebody will do a cover of a Beatles song or something, some like old school,
Yeah.
group or artist or whatever, and I can come back with like, yeah, dude, that was a Beatle. When the Beatles did that song, that was great, and I wasn't alive when they were
Right.
big, but I know music, and like they're like,
Yeah.
who are the Beatles? Or what's a rotary phone? It's like, get out of here, man! Like, go away.
Remember those
Somebody said,
pagers?
"Oh my gosh, I remember how I wanted one so bad, so
Yeah, I had
bad."
one. I was just thinking about that actually the other day. I was like, man, we had a pager. When we wanted to get a hold of somebody, we page them, and
Yeah,
then we gotta wait until they can get to a phone to call us back. It's crazy.
it's so bizarre. Like the life we used to lead before
Uh-oh.
cell phones, I almost don't really remember how it felt. Like it's just weird. Like you'd have to rush home to like call somebody back, and you had those message recorders or whatever they were called, voicemails that
Uh-huh.
you had to
Well,
change the
yeah,
tapes.
answering machines.
Answer machines. There you go. See, oh my god, that was horrible. Like that's not good at all. Not good at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, the crazy stuff that we leave behind.
Yeah. I was I'm curious to know also with you touched on homeschooling, and I was actually listening to the your previous podcast about homeschooling. I'm wondering though
You're like
if
my
it's
only listener, by
making
the way.
Hey, it's the only one that matters at this point right now. um I am curious though that what's making parents have a hard time with homeschooling is because the curriculum is given to them, right? Because for my wife and I, our homeschooling perspective is totally different. Where there's you have your subjects, math, science, history, whatever. But for us, the way we're doing it right now, at least at this early stage with our kids, is so we'll take math for instance, but then we'll teach them math the way we know how to teach, right? So we actually build our own curriculum. Um, Whereas if a curriculum is given to you, I think there's a huge learning curve where you have to learn how to teach the way the school system gives it to you to teach your children. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, see, it's kind of the same thing that you're talking about. So, like, when it comes to like math, we have that stupid Common Core stuff or whatever, and
Yeah.
it's just it's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of like the more complex ideas of like they're trying to
Right.
put they're trying to put they're using like more word problems and stuff like that, and the way that they word it is just super retarded. I mean, forgive me for using the
Yeah.
term. It is. It's
No,
ridiculous.
I completely agree, man. I hated it. When I looked into it, I was like, "What?" Like, I no, I learned how to do the multiplication table before I started first grade. Like, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of people argue like, "Oh, well, not all kids learn the way you do." I'm like, "No, I think that children are just being taught differently these days than they were being taught back in the day." But I don't know. I mean, that's just one perspective. It's just an opinion of mine, and the older I get, honestly, like the more I appreciate like old salty dog type of mentorship where
Absolutely.
these days it's like, oh no, we got to be more gentle and It's
Like
like,
my personally,
okay,
like the teacher that I want is a guy with like a really burly handlebar mustache, an anchor tattoo, with a corncob pipe. That's the teacher that I want. That guy has seen some stuff in his lifetime, and that's what I want to learn from.
right,
Like, yeah,
right, real life applications of how to learn, adapt, and apply. Like, you know what I mean?
absolutely. But on
But
the
I
other
don't
hand,
know, man.
I do have to say that on the other hand, like I have a newfound. I've respected teachers before because they deal with a lot of garbage with so many
Oh,
different
absolutely,
personalities and like just kids
absolutely.
that are punks and horrible. My father-in-law is actually a former teacher in high school, and like I don't know how he did it for as long as he did because he just recently retired.
Uh
But
huh.
like some of the stories that he would tell me, like he's so hilarious. Like, dude, if I could ever remember a story, I'll tell you at another time. But like, he's had so many run-ins with students that
Uh
are
huh.
just like, rude and just like the way they talk to like adults and like suffer zero consequences is bizarre to me. Like, I don't know where I
Uh
had
huh.
this like reverence or like healthy fear of like talking to somebody that's older than me and being disrespectful. Like,
Uh huh.
even if they don't deserve respect, like it's still like that maybe that was just ingrained in me with the way that my dad had raised me because he was really big on respect and stuff and but like I would never talk to somebody like that, like, and I don't know where these kids get off, but I have a newfound
Right.
respect for teachers because like I'm not I'm not a teacher, like this isn't real homeschool. I'm just making sure that my kid finishes her assignments and that she gets them turned in and that they're right, you know? And
Right. Right.
like that's hard enough as it is juggling a full time job, and going back and forth and making sure that I'm there to encourage and support and help and whatever. But I do the same thing. Like like I can we can go over the instructions together, but like I give her an alternative way to think about it. So instead of like these weird word problems where they like try to be really confusing, um, like I'll break it down into simple like, look, if you take these numbers and write them down like this, 62
Mm-hmm.
minus 13, and you draw the line just like regular math problems, right? Like just stick to
Right.
that.
Right.
Like grab those numbers and find out if you're taking away or you're adding or whatever, and then do it like this. And like I don't know, you learn the information like the same way. Like I don't understand like what needed to change.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude,
Yeah. I
I
don't know. I think just things are. We have. I don't know. I guess a group of people who are just trying to be so innovative or too innovative where they're trying to simplify things so much that it takes away critical thinking, you know? And I think that's a major aspect of learning that needs to be intact is the whole critical thinking process where we're not so reliant on, I don't know, on certain things, whatever it is, technology or resource information or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. As
Um,
much as I'm against Common Core, I think what they're trying to accomplish is real life application. So Susie has, 7 gray crayons, and Bobby came and took 2 of them. How many does Susie have now? Like it's that kind of stuff
mhm.
that they have these word problems, which I mean I can totally understand, but it's just like it seems that they're missing a lot of foundational like let's just work with numbers. Why does this plus this equal that? Like can we like
Right.
so yeah, dude, it's really interesting. But thankfully, like I said, my kid's pretty wicked smart, and she gets a hold of that stuff a lot, and she's a total perfectionist at 6. So I'm really trying to like harness that power right now and make sure that
Yeah.
we can use it for good because like dude
Yeah.
she melts down sometimes and she gets like 90%. Like she told her neighbor the other day, he's like, oh yeah, I bet you do really good in school, and she's like, yeah, except I got a 90% on my spelling test. And I'm like, dude, you know what I would have paid for a 90% to like get out of school? Like, are you serious? Like,
Nice.
holy smokes, yeah.
Nice.
So like
Yeah.
she's a perfectionist, but homeschooling is weird, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get you, man. Like, well, see, I have a theory. Um, on this whole, public school system or just the school system in general. And and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who's kind of noticed this. But from what I have 4 kids, right? And and I'm sure you know it. You have a daughter, but I don't think your knowledge is going to be limited to just having one child. But with 4 children, you have 4 different personalities, 4 different learning curves, 4 different learning styles, and I have my 6 year old who's in the public school system who's completely thriving, and I have another child who's not a public school system kind of learning. You know what I mean? And he thrives better, learns better at home. And so with this whole, I'm gonna try not to drag this out for so long because this could be a whole nother podcast too. But just it, just in general, right? Just in general, in essence, when you're trying to manage yourself and one other person, it's fairly easy. You guys can kind of discuss differences, get along, or step forward, move forward relatively quickly and easily. But when you try to gather a whole crowd, right? You ever have that parking lot syndrome? Like, all right, guys, where do you want to go now? Where do you want to go eat? And it takes you guys 2 hours to decide where to go.
Yeah.
And so
Oh,
imagine
that
how that happens with a
there
group
ends.
of adults, right? And then now take a group of children, and so then that's what kind of the system has to be implemented, right? There's got to be a norm. Where's this line where you're going to try to put these children on? There's going to be outliers, but that's the kind of caveat where the benefit and the what do you call this, not so beneficial rewards of being in a system is when you're trying to corral 20 different personalities. Like you know what where are you gonna draw the line as far as how are you gonna teach, what your curriculum is gonna be? And I just feel like at this point right now, the education system, I think in general, are playing it down to the child who's having the most amount of trouble versus trying to push the children up towards the level of where the smartest child is. Does that make sense?
100%.
So so I think that's kind of where people are kind of getting lost in this whole innovation in technology and education and whatnot. Is Yeah, I mean, I think they're so afraid of trying to challenge these kids to rise above that they'd rather downplay children. It's like, oh, Tommy can't do that. So let's go ahead and let's do it this way instead so Tommy can participate. Versus, all right, guys, Tommy's not quite here yet, but you know what? Let's go ahead and try to find ways to get Tommy better and more proficient at doing this. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that, I think, I don't think it's just the reason why I'm saying it, and the reason why I feel comfortable saying it is I think we are already seeing the results of that kind of mentality in adults these days, or young adults. Like the whole critical thinking thing, like the advent of the whole participation trophy, and then
That drives me
and
nuts.
then yeah, and then in the workforce, you have these people like, oh well, I quit my job. Well, like, what do you mean? You're only 3 months in. Like, yeah, I didn't think I was getting paid enough for what I know. It's like, well, you kind of, you know what I mean? So there's this whole entitlement thing where I don't know, it may not be entirely their fault, but I think that's kind of where the gap is in this trying to manage a group or a whole community into a system where, you know what I mean? Like there's certain standards like you got to have everyone kind of meet, and it's just unfortunately the standards are just getting lower and lower just to accommodate people or students down below versus trying to put a little bit of extra time, energy, and staffing to kind of elevate those children instead. But I don't know, yeah, it could be a lot more complicated than that, obviously, but that's kind of my theory.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, there's so many moving pieces. Like these ideas, like the ones that you're mentioning, are completely doable. But the people that are in control have different agendas.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much bureaucratic red tape and everything that really hinders, I think, even down to the very spirit and essence of what like this country was built on. Like it just totally
Yeah.
gets squashed by, you know, I mean, I'm not knocking environmentalists and stuff like that, but from what I'm learning about hunting and preservation, and even when it comes to wildfires and stuff, like controlled burns like are proven to prevent
Uh-huh.
disaster fires from happening, right? And
Right.
anybody who knows anything about like a forest fire or whatever, when a forest gets burned, you know that the ash and the just the stuff that happens to the
Carbon.
soil. Yeah, exactly. Like what happens to the soil, like it gets super fertile and like life regrows and it regenerates, and that's the cycle. Like that's the natural cycle of life, right? Um, but you can't set a controlled burn in this area because of this. Well, there's all these non-native beetles that are destroying these trees that kill them, and then they become like
Mm-hmm.
these massive whether they become like widowmakers or whatever.
Uh-huh.
You have this large patch of land that just is all this fuel that is just waiting to be set off, and you can blame it on climate change and whatever if you want, but guess what, the world's been getting hot and
Mm-hmm.
cold since the beginning of time, and it's going to get colder and it's going
Oh
to get
yeah.
hotter, whatever, right? And if it's
Yeah.
any indication of where we're at right now with climate change, like the reports and what we can see with our own eyes and smell with our own our nose, and feel in our lungs, like it's gotten so much clearer. Ecosystems are starting to thrive, like in the wild. We even have wildlife coming
Mm-hmm.
back into like suburban
Mm-hmm.
neighborhoods and stuff like that. Like, come on, like it doesn't take that long, like to give the earth a break. Granted, I'm fully
Right.
on board with like not like raping and pillaging the earth for every single bit of resource and just like squeezing the crap out of it. But I mean, like,
Right.
honestly, it's not
Right.
like as detrimental as people I think are saying. But that'll be a whole nother
Yeah,
podcast.
no. Yeah. No, yeah, we've just become so obsessed in such a sterilized life, meaning just people just want so much control. They want to control freaking everything.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty obnoxious in a lot of cases.
yeah, man, it's ironic. They want so much control but they can't adapt. It's like, you
Right.
know, but anyway, yeah, you're right. That could be a whole new different podcast.
Dude, look at us coming up
Man,
with
I didn't realize these things could go on for like 6 hours, bro.
dude, I'm telling you, like the first one, like we barely like the main topic that I wanted to go over with my buddy. We probably spent maybe like close to 45 minutes out of almost a 3 hour long podcast. It was crazy, but that's actually a decent segue into what we're going to talk about today. And
Oh, right on.
I have to say, um, I appreciate you so much because we are so on the same level with like how we view things, how we see things, how we believe, and what we believe in. The first thing um, that you sent me that you wanted to discuss was about family and the structure of family and what that looks like, and like
Hmm.
I'm speaking to a carbon copy of my exact belief. So this is kind of cool. But you wanted to talk about family, so go for it.
Yeah, man. So, and this is also the hardest aspect, I think, in at least my life. Um, I can't really speak for everyone out there, but so the way I view the structure of family is God first, right? I mean, I'm a believer. We're a whole family of God, and are we perfect? Heck no. And we don't really strive to be perfect either.
Yeah,
But one of the hardest things to really grasp in a family unit is who's going to be prioritized first. And I'm not talking about like life or death situations, but it's just a common daily practice of where your mindset is, and what kind of guidance you follow, and how to approach taking care of your family. And for us, we try, at our best, we try to put God first. And when I say that, it is God first, and then wife, and then children, right? And it seems to be very, very counterintuitive to others. To most, I don't know. To some, I don't know. But I know from the outside, it's like, whoa, man, that sounds super insane. Like, how dare you like put trust or prioritize something that you can't even feel or see or touch? And well, to each their own. But for us as a family of God, like God first, and that allows us to remove a lot of ego, right? And it's like, man of the or who's the head of household. Typically, well, they'll say, men are, sure, and in certain biblical terms, that's the way it's seen. The man of the house is usually head of household, but I think it's just God first because it kind of sets rules and regulations on how we treat each other that's outside of ego, right? It's not like, oh, well, this is how I want to run it because this is how I think that we should be showing respect to each other, right? It's outside of myself, it's outside of my wife. Um, so God first, and He's kind of set this, he has a set of rules. It's been written in the Bible and whatnot. So that's kind of how we view things. Is it? It's it. Do we follow it perfectly? No, probably most often than not, we totally forget who's first.
With that train of thought, um, I think the biggest problem, like people that would disagree with that view, I think don't understand what you're saying or what we believe in the proper context, right? Like
Hmm.
it can sound, even if you're like reading the Bible, it can sound like this very uh, the not necessarily misogynistic, but um, this idea that the husband rules over everything, almost like with an iron fist, and the husband makes all the decisions, and everybody else's opinion and thoughts and feelings don't really matter. That is absolutely
Uh-huh.
100% untrue. Like if you're living,
Absolutely.
if you're operating within a godly family, right? Like as men, as the husband, as the fathers, we have somebody to report to, and we're accountable to somebody, right?
Yep.
And if we're not, like, I mean, you might not immediately get quote unquote fired, but at some point, like, you're going to reap what you sow. You know what I'm saying? And so, what I think people fail to understand, especially when it comes to just Christianity in general, is the context basically. And so if the husband is accountable to Jesus and God and operating on those on his guidelines, right, then understanding who God is, that he is all loving and that he has your best interest in mind. If you're following that example, then everything that you do should be good for the family, right? You have your wife's
Hmm.
best interest in mind, you have your child's best interest in mind. But that doesn't mean that like they can't speak their mind or that they can't share their feelings or ideas or emotions. Like that's like, especially the husband and wife, that relationship, it's a it's a partnership, like it's equal, and
Hmm.
but every there has to be some level of accountability. You can't have a team of managers, managing each other. That doesn't work, right? You have to have somebody that
Yeah.
you report to, right? um, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and so that's kind of the way that family, I mean, you don't have to run family like a business. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's accountability, right? And so if we're
Uh-huh.
accountable to God and living by his standards, and understanding in context that he is a God of love, and that we are to, and if you read Ephesians, it's very interesting, always has been. Ephesians tells us as husbands, our job, love your wife as yourself, right? It doesn't tell wives to
Hmm.
love their husbands, because that's the natural inclination that they have built in. Like they just do that
Uh-huh.
naturally. That comes to them,
Absolutely.
natural form. But it's us that has the
Yeah.
problem, that we forget to do that. And so if we're living in that context and we're loving and respecting our wives, then yes, then we are operating as we should as the head of household. But
Yeah.
are we any more powerful or better than they are? Absolutely not. Like I'd be pretty lost without my wife, to be completely honest.
Oh,
Like
dude, same here.
serious.
You think I'd be able to go fight fire without a supportive wife? Heck no. I tell her all the time she is as much as a firefighter as I am. Because when I'm gone, she's head of household over here. When I need to go train, she's the one cooking dinner, cleaning the house, and taking care of the kids. You know what I mean? So it's like yeah, dude. I see. Here's the thing too. The way I look at it is, I used to be one of those guys who uh, I followed like Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, whoever, like, and substitute any human being or mentor that you follow out there, and put quotes on Facebook like, oh, this is who I follow, and this is how I live my lifestyle according to these quotes. Well, the thing is, it's like, is man perfect? Like, if you were to go ahead and get whatever, a kit or something that you want to build at home, and you have these set of instructions, right? How frustrating would it be to follow these instructions, to only to be like, oh, well, yeah, we could maybe put this here. Or you get you get sent a mail. It's like, oh, by the way, these instructions were wrong, here's a new way of doing it. And on and on and on and on. It's like, what the heck, you get so frustrated.
Yeah, you don't build IKEA furniture
And
like that. If you don't follow the instructions, you're going to end up with extra parts and a pile of crap by the time that you're done.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I think that's how certain people today are getting put on such pedestals, like, oh, like, oh my gosh, how dare her or he say that, and this and that, like, she or he was my mentor. Oh my gosh, I've just lost complete respect for them. It's like, why? They're they're as human as you are. They're going to make mistakes. They're definitely going to have difference of opinions on certain things, right? And so what I've realized is, why bother trying to follow and live my life according to what other people think is good. Now, is it good stuff that they're saying? Yeah, absolutely. But I'll always check it with the Bible. So why not then live a life, walk on a line, like what you said, report to somebody who's perfect, who will never be like, well, maybe we could actually do. Actually, you know what? Hold on, give me a second. Let me think about it. Like, no, this is it. You know what I mean? This is the definite truth, and this is just the way it is. If you don't want to do it, you know what? It's okay. You're not going to get in trouble. You're going to get yourself into trouble, and if you want to get out of that, I'm right here. You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at it. So I kind of stopped doing that. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to get my inspiration and uh, my wisdom from a perfect being rather than another human being. And with that said, this allows my wife and I to actually walk side by side as we guide our family and as we walk out our faith, versus, hey, this is what I know, follow me, instead of her walking behind me. And when I make a mistake, instead of me being getting blamed on, we're walking side by side, because I could tell my wife, look, it's over there, it's outside of me, right? So it's not ego, it's there, that there's the truth. And I think there's only one way, right? The fastest point between between 2 points is a straight line. It's not through me, it's over there. And so as a man of household, I think that's, and also woman of household, it's like, hey, and that's the beautiful thing too, is like, I can get checked also, as a man of household. Hey, husband, by the way, this is what the Bible says, and we're not doing that. Oh, you know what? You're right. Like, you know what I mean? So it just totally removes everything out of ego, and it's a proper check and balance, where we can walk side by side versus behind or in front of somebody, each other, you know?
Right, absolutely. And the other thing too is what's interesting is there's something else that you had said. Um, when we're walking that line, number one, we're setting an example to people that are observing. Right? There's always going to be
Mhm.
somebody watching, and so our actions, which are extremely interesting and fascinating, our actions have a direct effect on how people see our beliefs, right? So
Mhm.
if we're that husband that rules with an iron fist because we believe, the Bible says that the husband's the head of the household, and we just take that as face value and make up our own like game plan right around that.
Mhm.
What
Totally
what
out of context. Yeah.
what ends up happening is now people see God as like, well, that person says they believe in God. God must be like that. I don't want anything to do with that, right? So
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
like we forget that people are not perfect. Even Christians, like nowhere near it. I'm serious. Like I'm like my shot. I'm the one that's hitting the concrete wall like constantly. Like my arrow does not fly straight. And so, um, I think people forget, and they misplace the representation. Like, people mess up, and that's what's wrong. It's not the Bible. It's not God. It's people mess up. And like that was something
Mhm.
that even just in the last couple of years, my wife and I have been married. It'll be 10 years in August, and
Oh, wow, man. Nice
yeah,
work. Congrats.
dude, thanks. It's pretty much been awesome the entire time. I couldn't imagine my life being any other way. But we've learned
Uh-huh.
together that putting each other in charge of our own happiness is a bad idea. A bad idea.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
like
yeah,
being
terrible.
that responsibility that is imperfect, you're setting yourself
Uh-huh.
up for failure. Your expectations are here, and if they don't meet that, then I'm a person. If I have an expectation and it's not met, like I get really irritated. To be honest, like
Mhm.
it goes with anything. Like my bow was supposed to be here on April 30th, and all of a sudden, like 2 days before, it was sitting for in Rialto for like almost 48 hours, and I'm like, dude, that's 47 minutes. Like, I'll just come get it, bro. Like, what? Like, get down
Right,
here.
right.
And then all of a sudden the date switched to May 1st. I was like, oh hell no! Like, you did not just switch that day. I got another day for this, man. Like, come on. Not
Right.
giving one care about we're all in a pandemic and there's much more people that are in need. Like, it was completely selfish. Anyways, it got here on the 30th, so somebody heard my expectation. Like, we got to get this guy his bow. But
Prayers answered.
right? So, but my expectation wasn't being met at that point, and I was frustrated. And it's silly because it's just some material thing that I really wanted, and I'm like obsessing over.
Mhm.
Yeah, dude. So if you're putting your life in general in somebody else's hands and expecting them to meet your expectations, dude, you're in for a rude freaking awakening. And I guarantee
Oh,
that
dude, they have, yeah, no idea.
that's
Yo.
the biggest cause, in my personal opinion. I have no studies or stats to back this up, but you see all these marriages that fall apart, especially like Hollywood, right? We see all these
Oh,
stars
yeah.
married, and like all is good, and then all of a sudden, like 2 years in, 4 years in, 10 years in, whatever, they split, and they're like, oh, we're best friends now, and it's just like, dude, that's heartbreaking. Like, if I split from my wife, like, oh my gosh, like I would be seriously depressed, you know, um,
Yeah,
because she's the closest thing next to the air that I breathe, right? And
right.
I I just don't see how people can do that. But I think what happens is the level of expectations. There's not healthy expectations. You don't have a fair idea of what love really is and what marriage really means. and you have all these like weak or false expectations that you walk into it with, and when that's not met, it's only a matter of time before you get tired of your expectations not being met, and you don't think that that person meets your
Mm-hmm.
standard anymore, and you think that there's something else, you know, and then it
Right.
all.
Right. No, absolutely.
Now you said something else when you had sent me your notes that I think is a concept that we all struggle with, and I don't think a lot of people in the Christian community really understand. Is
Uh-huh.
your wife is second after God, but before children. This has always been fascinating for me because it
Yeah.
almost is against the way that our entire culture and society looks at kids.
Right. Well, my perspective is, I think the simplest way I can describe it is good cop, bad cop, right? And I don't like that. And I don't think children should be looking at their parents, especially from a young age, because they're very, very, very impressionable, right? And it's already hard enough where I have four boys, and I'm yearning to have a fifth child, which uh, we're all praying that it's going to be a girl.
Dude, seriously,
But
you're my hero. Like I can't even imagine my first one. Like God love her, she was difficult for like a year and a half, the 2 years, like the first year and a half, first two
yeah,
years. She scared both my wife and I. We were like, I mean, we're barely surviving right now. Like, there's no way. Like, people are like, oh no, have another one. Like, they'll entertain each other. I don't see that happening. Like, like for the long.
yeah, no, trust me, that leap from one to two is so massive. But once you get there, subsequent children are kind of like definitely smaller gaps. At least the sooner you have them closer together,
Yeah.
the easier it is. But when you have them in 5, 6, 7, 8 years apart, it's like, yeah, because it's just single child again,
Well,
because
I'll
the
tell
other
you,
one's grown.
my 6-year-old is heckling my wife and I for like a baby brother or sister. Like, she's like,
Oh, there you go. Well, I think girls are going to be different because they're more like nurturing. They're all mother like, so they're more apt to like take care of their younger sibling
that is
than a
totally
boy.
it. Absolutely. Like, it's so adorable. Like, my cousin and his wife, they just had their third child.
Uh-huh.
And like just a couple of weeks ago, or actually on the 22nd. And like they have, I think Maddie is 2 going on 3, and she's adorable. Oh my gosh, she's like the cutest kid, and like she like idolizes Annabelle, and so anytime like we go
Oh
and
yeah.
hang out, like they like Annabelle completely mommies her, and like it like gets down on her level. Like I can totally see the nurturing part, and Annabelle like just
Yeah.
revels in it, and then like Maddie just eats the attention of. She just loves it, and like they're like the cutest friends like I've ever seen. But Annabelle's like 3 years older than her, and like but they get
Yeah.
along so well. Like I know Annabelle would be great, but like kids are a lot of responsibility. I don't think this day and age people understand like, okay, we all know how to make a kid, so you need to be responsible. When you do that, you can't just say, "Oh, I don't want this now. Oops, I made a mistake." Like, no, 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 no. That
Right.
could be another
Right.
podcast. Too. But like honestly, like there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it, and I think for the longest time, I thought myself like I love our trio so much. Like when my wife was pregnant, like I'd have these like kind of like daydreams of Saturday morning eating breakfast in bed, watching Saturday morning cartoons, just the three of us, and stuff like that, and like
Yeah.
loved that idea, in my head, and we honestly do that. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think what really was a deterrent for me is I couldn't I have to understand something if like I'm gonna do it right. Otherwise, if I don't have like some sort of like understanding of the mechanics of how something works, it's just not gonna jive with me, right? And so I couldn't see myself loving splitting my love between two kids. right? Because I was never really all that hip on having
I
kids
see.
until like I met
Oh,
my
okay.
wife's niece, both of my wife's nieces, before we got
Uh-huh.
married. And like these two girls, I mean, they're growing up into like these amazing, young women. But at the time,
Yeah.
like, dude, they were incredible. And like Presley, the oldest, the first time I met her, she was like 3, I think. And she said two of
Mhm.
the most profound and adorable things to me when we first met. Like, we were there for several hours. We were just visiting and whatever. And we were playing, having a grand old time. And at one point, we were playing some weird game that she had made up on the spot. And she had told me, she was handing out bracelets, right? And she handed them out to
Uh-huh.
Maggie and Maggie's mom. And um, Maggie, I think, said, "Well, what about Anthony? Doesn't he get a bracelet?" And she said, "No." And then we were just kind of like laughing, and Maggie was like, "Well, why?" And she's like, "Well, because he's always lying and he's always a loser." I fell out laughing. Like, that was the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I've only known you for like 2 hours, and like you come at me with that. Like, I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And then at the end of the day, like, I was saying goodbye, and I was like, "Hey, Presley, it was nice to meet you. It was great hanging out, playing, and stuff like that. Hopefully, I'll see you again soon or whatever." And then I was like,
Yeah.
"I had fun. Did you have fun today, or something like that?" And she's like, "No." And I was just like, "Oh." I was like, it sounded like you had fun. She's like, "I was just pretending." And that was literally the goodbye. Like, that was the last thing that we said to each other for whatever. That was like our first week. So classic. And I was just
Oh,
like,
man.
dude, I want one of those. Like, if I can teach my kid to be like that, like, that's my goal right there.
Yeah.
They're sassy like that. I'm all for
Yeah.
it. But that was kind of like my
Oh,
first
man.
taste at like, what kids would be like. And at that moment, I was just like, all right, I could do this kid thing. And then we got Annabelle, and I was just like, wow, like, talk about my life being like renovated. Like, it was just
Yeah.
a crazy experience.
Yeah, that was such a cool day, man. Like, I remember when Maggie told me she was, and when she was born, and like I full on, I used to get like anxiety attacks and panic attacks a lot, and once I got married, like they kind of dropped off and went away. And the first one that I had after a long, long, long time was literally on the day my kid was being born. So like Maggie woke up at like 3:30 in the morning or whatever, started going into labor or whatever. And like I was cool, man. Like I was really proud of myself. And like yeah, we got to the hospital and everything, and I was still good. And then all of a sudden, when she was released from my care and I left her in the care of the nurses took over and they were doing vitals and all this kind of stuff. Like all of a sudden,
Yeah.
like it started to hit, and like I think my brain started to process like
So
what's happening
true.
at this moment, right? And I was like, dude, I am so screwed right now. This is the worst time that this could actually happen, right? And so, like, I remember, like, I'm trying to maintain, and like, we're in this little room before they moved her to the her own delivery room, and I'm like, I'm not gonna make it. Like, this is not this can't happen right now. Like, one of these things has to be put on pause so I can resolve like one of these two things. This is not happening, and so I ended up going into a full blown anxiety
Uh-huh.
attack. And I'll tell you what, if it was not for my in laws, who are like the greatest people, coming down. Like my father-in-law took me down to the cafeteria. He's like, "What do you want? I'll buy you something to eat. You know, you need to get food in your stomach." And I was just like, "I'm gonna have an apple because that's the only thing that sounds good." And like they got there, and I'd already been in the bathroom, like splashing cold water on my face, trying to snap out of it. And like they walk in, and
Oh
they're
my
like,
god.
"Dude, you look like a wet, drowned rat. What happened?" And I'm like, I really don't feel good, guys. Like, I'm not gonna make it." So my wife's in the middle of contractions and giving birth. I'm over on the little couch, like just curled up in a ball, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then at some point before she was actually born, we're talking like 20, 30 minutes before she was born, I finally snap out of it. Like my body's just like
Nice.
physically and mentally exhausted. I'm like, okay, let's have a baby, right? And so I'm there the whole time. And they have this like Annabelle's, entering the world, and like I'm like looking at, and like normally people are like, okay, like that's ruined for me. Like it's not gonna be the same.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like just in
Yeah.
awe. I'm like, dude, like this is the craziest thing. And like Maggie's so over
Yeah.
this at this point. She just wants this baby out. She wants to take a nap and have a sandwich and just like be done with this whole charade. And so she doesn't want to do anything else. She's just like, get it out. Let's just move on with our lives. And I'm like, babe, you have no clue. This is like the most amazing thing you've ever seen. Like, and they have a mirror and they're like, oh, do you want to look? And Maggie's like, no, I don't want to. Babe, you got to see this. And I like pull the mirror over and like, what, dude? It was like the most bizarro
Yeah, man.
experience. Like, I was all excited. Maggie's exhausted. She's like, dude, just get this over with. Like, I don't want to look at nothing. Like, stop it.
It's so beautiful, dude. I was for our last baby. I was we went the home birth route. Oh, well, we were at a birthing center, so it was in a room.
Mhm.
There was a pool, there was a bed, and like my wife, she was free to labor any way she wanted. So I was with her. Like we were in the pool together. We were standing. We were pacing. We were laying down together. And I caught my baby boy.
Really?
Yeah, man. I actually, you know, so the midwife helped me out. I was in front the whole time. I had, once baby started crowning, the head came out. I had my hand around his head, and they teach you how to coax the baby out a little bit so she can pass the shoulders, which is the
Yeah.
widest point of the baby. And yeah, man, I totally caught him. I think my hand, my skin was his first human contact as he was being born. It's
See?
freaking awesome. It's
It's
beautiful,
like
dude.
catching a basketball being passed to you, man. You had all the experience.
I know,
That's why you're
right?
the coach. That's why you're JQ coach.
And what's ironically enough, though, my wife was like, "Please leave your coaching status out this freaking door. Just shut up. Do
If you
not
try to
say
coach me on
anything."
anything right now, like you're done, son.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, that's great.
Exactly. Dude, I recommend every single soon to be or repeat father who has never done it to be right there catching the little one, because
Yeah.
I don't know, it just shows a whole different appreciation of what your wife goes through throughout the whole 9 months, right?
Yep.
And there were times like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, why do you feel sick again?" Or like, do you really want to eat that?" Like, "Oh my gosh, are you really sad like right now? Oh my god, are you really excited and happy right now?" Like, "Oh, you're sad again. You're crying." Like, dude, what the
Yeah. Nope. I know what you mean.
right? But as soon as baby's out, you're like, "Oh my god, I totally understand. You're so awesome. I love you so much."
Well, you know what? After like experiencing that and seeing what my wife went through and going through all of those like thoughts and emotions and whatnot, the most like prolific thought that hit my brain, and that like I mean gives me goosebumps anytime like I like you know recall that moment and like kind of like go through it. I loved this new human that was just like entered into the world so much, like immediately, like I was just drawn to my kid.
Yeah,
And I remember thinking, if I love this person who I just met as much as I do right now, like I can only imagine how much my heavenly Father must love me. And like
right?
that hit me like a brick to the brain. Like that was
Right.
like so crazy to like just kind of like have that
Yeah.
realization. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty
And
bizarre.
I'll bring this back to where you were saying that you were kind of concerned. You're like, "Oh, I don't know how I can split my love if I had multiple children."
Yeah,
But if I were to tie that into like a biblical reference, is we're all God's children, and do you ever feel like God's love for you is split between you and the person next to you?
right.
No, right? So I'll tell you, man, from firsthand experience, dude, your love actually multiplies when you have multiple children. I know I've heard a lot of people say like, "Oh, I don't want to split my attention, split my love." Like, dude, if you uh if you're a halfway decent human being, at least, you know what I'm saying? Like, you will have no problem multiplying your love. It's
Mm.
insane. It's cool. It's crazy. It's an awesome experience. But, you know, uh I get it. I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, you should have another child, man, because it's awesome." I'm just saying, like, if you ever come across that point, like, you got nothing to worry about, dude. If you love your daughter so much the way it is right now, oh boy, you're gonna be able to multiply yourselves easy,
Yeah,
easy,
we've
easy.
actually been thinking about it. Hopefully I'm not like giving anybody any false hope out there, um, but yeah, we've talked about it, and we think that if it were to happen again, and we decide yes, like this, I think is the like we're in the best time to actually do that, like in our lives. So
Yeah.
we think it would be doable, and like I said, Annabelle's so great that I think it would be easier with her to kind of like help out and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I look at my cousin and his wife, and watching them go through, you know coming into their third now. um
Mhm.
like like I said, anybody that has more than one, to me, is like you've achieved hero status. Like if I had an award to give you, or a trophy, like I would, because like I think that's amazing. Like because I don't see myself being like as capable, and like a lot of parents seem like they have it together pretty well. I know it's difficult when
Yeah.
you're not around, but like I watch my cousin and his wife, and they're amazing parents. They definitely have their hands full, and like I've seen their struggles and stuff, and like they they're good shining example of like um how loving parents should be. So
Nice.
I actually look up to them a lot. but
Good.
uh but yeah, so there's something else that we briefly touched upon, but um that's next kind of on the list as we're going down this thing, is elders.
Yeah. So, a lot of few layers to this. Let's see. Number one, I don't really have like that great of a relationship with my parents, at least currently.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's not like we're mad at each other or whatever. It's just that there's just this gap in communication and gap in just understanding life in general type of thing. Um, and then on top of that too, the other layer is it's really sad to see a lot of elders in elderly homes, um, away from family, where I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I'm not trying to be racist, or anything like that. It's just that in the Philippines, right? I'm Filipino and I was born in Los Angeles, but I actually grew up in the Philippines for my first like 8, 9 years. So I grew up in a third world country where family uh, kind of operates a little bit differently over there, compared to the United States.
Hmm.
Over there, man, you go to a house and it's like 2 to 3 generations of family living under one roof, right? Over here, it's like one generation or 2 generations, right? Like husband and wife and kids,
Yeah.
and the elderly is elsewhere, either capable enough to live alone independently, or they need assisted living. Well, in the
Right.
Philippines, whether they're dependent or not, or independent or not, they're living under one roof. Um, and that kind of gave me two different perspectives. Like on one hand, it's like, oh, it'd be nice to have that freedom, and you're not always tied down by an elderly, whatever. Like our grandma used to live with us here, and when we go out on road trips and whatnot, we always had to accommodate her disabilities. Like we want to go for a hike, but we'd have to make sure it's wheelchair accessible, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And and then on the whole world perspective thing, uh, like you get those C9 mentality, or like, oh, back in my day, we didn't,
I can't
whatever.
wait to say that. Honestly, like that's my next milestone in my life after my midlife crisis and my moped. Then
Yeah,
then it's that moment where I get to say that all the time. That's what I'm looking forward to.
yeah, and so it's a lot of like, oh, it's my world now, it's my turn now, and it's like the way you used to it just doesn't really, it's not relevant anymore. But honestly, like it just it just doesn't really matter anymore. It's like I think they deserve to be like relevant and current no matter what. I think, and so it's just kind of just let go of the past, just love them, allow them to be who they are. It's hard. It Most of the times it might feel like they're a burden on you because you can't live your life, whatever. But I think there could be better ways of trying to find that balance uh, of being present and relevant rather than just kind of leaving them in an elderly care home. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
absolutely. Well, I mean, here's the two biblical concepts that tie into that, right? So you have, honoring your father and your mom, right? Your
Hmm.
father and your mother, and then you also have, the husband will. Oh man, is it the husband will leave his? Does it say the husband and wife? I should know this. This is really sad,
I
everybody.
think it's I think I think the husband will leave. Typically, it's no, 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 no. No, I think the wife leaves.
Do I?
The
I
female leaves.
literally have to look this up. This is so pathetic. Like I
No,
should.
because I think if you look at,
This is
I was
like
gonna say if you look
Bibleology
at medieval
101.
times. Well, it's well if you just look at the sacrament of marriage, right? The if you just if you remember, right, like the the father of the bride gives her away, so the wife, the female leaves.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, therefore, here it is. It's Genesis 2:24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Okay, so
Okay, yeah.
yeah, dude, I'm like so disappointed in myself. Like, anyways, so like I said,
Okay, I was wrong too.
that was like Bibleology 101, and I like so failed. But yeah, so like we're we're supposed to like leave our parents and like basically start our own family, and
Hmm.
those two things, as much as they kind of seem contradictory, they actually can coexist. Like my mom for a while, um, wherever she is right now. She like she lived with Maggie and I for a while with my little brother, and unfortunately, things happen. Lost touch with
Uh-huh.
him. Um, don't really know where they are or how they're doing, which is kind of sad. But they're in God's care and
Uh-huh.
all that. But like it was rough. Like it was rough. Like at the beginning of our marriage, Maggie lived with me while I was at my mom's. Then we got our own apartment and we kind of built our thing. And then things happened, and we had my mom move in with my brother for us, and they stayed I think
Uh-huh.
like 3 months and whatever. And hats off to any culture that is the norm, because not everybody is um, easy to live with.
Yeah, no, I know, and you know to and here the 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 dark side or the ugly part of that too, though, is there's a lot of resentment that happens, because it's like, oh, I can't live my life because I'm stuck at home because I gotta care for,
Mm,
and totally understandable. So, like I said, there's got to be a balance, and that's one of the biggest reasons why my wife and I wanted to live somewhere uh, like this place in Southwest Oregon. Is eventually have our own property, like a few acres, where we would actually build maybe one or two extra properties where our parents can live, so they can live independently,
mhm.
right? But we're just literally an acre or 2 acre away if they need us or for whatever reason, and we can still commune and be a family together, but also have our own space and privacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but there's different ways to skin the cat, and I'm not saying the way you know our our relatives in the Philippines are doing it is like the way to do it. Like, if you look at villages, like tribes, the elderly is held up to be the most knowledgeable and most wisdom in the whole village. Like people go to them for advice and wisdom, right?
Absolutely, right.
And in modern day society, they're kind of shunned off to the side, like, oh, it's okay, grandma, grandpa, your time has passed. It's okay. We'll take it over from here. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like some like senility is like, like some kind of like disqualifying, condition or something.
Yeah, yeah. But um but yeah, I mean, I just kind of to tie this all together, I just kind of wanted to go back to where putting my wife second, after God, but before children, it helps us solidify our foundation with, number one, our relationship between her and I, because in before we had children, it was me and her, right?
Yeah.
So technically, yeah, it's my wife is first. And so as we transition into becoming parents, it kind of gives us this foundation of, okay, what's our parenting logic and parenting philosophy going to be like?
Hmm.
How are we going to do problem solving? How are we going to communicate with each other? How are we going to deal with emotional intelligence and all that stuff, so that it's a trickle down effect, so that when we go ahead and now tend to our children, it's not like, oh, oh, go ask your father. Or
Right.
it's more of a backdoor thing where, a child asks me for one thing and I say no, and then they'll circle back to mom hoping that they'll answer differently, right?
Oh yeah, that drives
Because,
me nuts.
dude, children are freaking sneaky little bastards. They're smart. They're a lot, they will purposefully undermine you because they're selfish little brats.
I'll
They
tell you
will.
what. Do you know the funniest thing about that is just the other day? Like this is Annabelle in a nutshell. She can be super sneaky, right? And but she'll rat herself out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so the other day, like, she thinks she's slick. Like, when I'm working, like, I'm, like, usually intently focused on what I'm doing, and I, like, it's very hard to, like, multitask, right? And,
Uh-huh.
so she goes, during this whole quarantine thing, we moved the big screen to the bedroom, so she's got this nice, big bed to just, like, roll around in and watch TV and, whatever. Um or she'll go in a room and play with her toys and stuff like that. But she thinks she gets sneaky, and like she told my wife the other day, yeah, sometimes when dad's working, like I'll tiptoe and like I'll like slowly close the door so it doesn't make any noise, and like I turn the knob, and she goes through her whole process of like being this like ultra criminal, right? And she's like divulging all of her secrets, and like I can hear her, like my door's open, like I know, it's just like I can't do anything, like she's not in trouble, she's not doing anything dangerous, like whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so she like divulged all that to my wife the other day, and then my wife tells me, and I was like, yeah, no, I hear her. She's not as sneaky as she thinks she is. Like I might be like an older guy now, but I'm not an idiot. Like I see what's going on. Yeah, she's
Right.
like just trying to be like super sneaky and deceitful, and like, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
she'll hide snacks behind her back. Like, no, I wasn't. No, I didn't get the chips. Like,
Oh yeah, dude. No, for sure. And
yeah,
dude, man, children will drive wedges between parents. It's like,
yeah,
they'll freaking, because the last thing you want to is like, so either mom or dad is disciplining their child, and then the other parent comes in and just bails them out.
yeah,
So that just totally undermines your authority.
yeah.
And for me, at least at this point, like I don't have, all my children are pretty young. And what I was alluding to earlier too, having four boys at the very early stages of life, it's all about mom, right?
Hmm.
My wife still breastfeeds, and there's that nurturing calming effect with mom. And so it's hard, like when they're crying, it's very hard for me to calm them down and soothe them, right? I
Yeah,
can't. It's more difficult for me to put them to bed because, like again, my 2-year-old still breastfeeds. Like so I physically cannot do that, and that's just really weird if I let him latch on to me.
yeah,
So there's already that disconnect between me and the children. You know what I mean? And then and if parenting is going to be another wedge, dude, that's not fair. I don't think that's right. So in that sense, it kind of saves a marriage too. Also, if you guys, man and wife, spouse, get on the same page and it's like, okay, we got each other's back. We're going in a battle, and we're both squad bosses here. We're both crew bosses, and we got to manage these little guys. You just
nice
got to be
wildland reference.
right, right. But you
Nice, I
got to
like
be on the
that.
same page, man.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah,
be on the
good
same
job, good
page.
job.
Because yeah, man, you're or otherwise one person's gonna get thrown out, and all hell's gonna break loose, and then you get unwily children who you can't control because they're getting pulled two different ways, and then once they're in bed. guess what? Guess where that argument's gonna lead to?
Right.
It's
Right.
gonna be between husband and wife,
Yep.
right? Like, oh, I can't believe you did that. I was trying to do this. Like, well, I didn't think that, So it's like that's why I think children will come last. And I guess the other great analogy I can think of is when you go on a flight, when they go through all the emergency procedures before you take off,
Yeah.
right? What do they tell you about your oxygen mask?
Take care of yourself first and then the person next to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if husband and wife is good, then you know for sure the children are going to be good
Right.
because everything's operates on the same page, and just kind of trickles down to the elders. If wife and husband and wife is good, you guys are on the same page. I think elders are going to be taken care of in a really good positive way. Um, but that's just my little humble opinion in my short lifetime.
No, but like there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I think that again, a lot of what you're saying can be, if you don't understand the context and why and how that works in the way that it does and why that is healthy, like I think that's, that can be absolutely, labeled as another, um, cause for divorce. Because I'll tell you what, like with with uh with me personally, um I need attention too. Like
Oh yeah, of
I want
course.
my wife's attention. I want to talk with her, and I want to, share ideas, and I still want, her affection and her love, and, all that kind of stuff too. And like kids can really, what I've learned personally, is that like there are going to be times where I have to take a back seat, and
Yeah,
sometimes that's hard, and if you don't really have, like I said, a fair expectation of what love and marriage means and looks like, and what happens, in that relationship. Um, you either better learn quick, or you're gonna be on a rough road, because it's
oh
not
yeah,
puppies and rainbows,
oh yeah.
And so, you know, the interesting thing is my wife and I are pretty much complete opposites. Um, and like this is how opposite it is, to give you a perspective. I love hardcore music. Like I love like the heaviest, like, guttural sounding vocals and distorted guitars and blast beat. Like I love that stuff, right?
Nice.
Um and she, like, has a crush on Justin Timberlake. So like that's like the spectrum, right?
Oh yeah.
And yeah, dude. So how we got matched up and like how we work so well together, like I don't know. It does not make any sense. We even come from different parenting backgrounds. Mine wasn't the most healthiest, and her parents, are, these like great people that, the interesting thing was too, talking about like elders and living with each other. When Annabelle was born, I lost my job shortly after that. Like my company shut down, and they laid everybody off. And so we
Uh-huh.
ended up moving in with them for like 6, 7 months. And
Woo.
it was great. Like, I mean,
Oh, okay.
I can't even believe like how much I'm blessed to have the in-laws that I do, because the Billy and Luann, I'm giving you a shout out right now. They're crazy. They gave us their master bedroom. You
Oh
know, like
wow.
they slept on a floor in another room, and it was just like, and they like had a 3 bedroom house. They could sleep wherever they wanted, and they chose to, like, get all
Nice.
cozy on the floor in another room, and they gave us, like, especially me being an outsider, like they gave
Yeah.
us their bedroom. And like that was,
Yeah.
we raised Annabelle, there until we moved to Marietta. Like it was crazy, but like they were the best roommates like I've ever had, hands
Awesome.
down. And they still mean the world to me. And yeah, dude. So I got really super lucky, but the parenting styles were dramatically different.
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of, I guess, intensity, right? And
Right.
she didn't, like, so like when I raised my voice, right? because that tends to make people move. you know, um, and that's usually like what it leads to. But like I've never had to spank my child or anything like that. I don't think I ever will need to. I don't think that's necessary, because
Hmm.
I have ways of that are more of a
Effective.
deterrent for, yeah, exactly, effective than that.
Yeah.
Um, but um, um, but she's not like, her dad and her mom never yelled. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm not airing dirty laundry, but they did not raise kids like with the same intensity. Like it was just not that way. And so like,
Uh-huh.
when those things happen, like that creates a little uh, that creates a tense moment that we have to talk about and everything like that, and whatever. But again, being so opposite, like it's crazy, like how well we actually gel, and the things that we are on the same page with, and like,
Yeah.
we click really really well. And like, our marriage is not perfect, but I honestly wouldn't change it for the world. And it breaks my heart to see other people struggle in their marriage, to where
Yeah.
like they're constantly at odds, like for some reason on me. Like I don't know, maybe that's because my parents split when I was young, but
Hmm.
like for me, like that's just heartbreaking to see these two people that started off by loving each other, and now like they're like, there's bitterness and like hatred in a lot of cases, and like this just
Yeah.
disconnect, like that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. No, I understand it. I'm actually living on both worlds. I got one, one foot set on one side and the other foot set on the other side because I have four boys total, but two of them are actually from previous relationship, and that's who my eldest, who's 6, and then I also have a 3-year-old who's his younger brother, and my 6-year-old is like, oh, how come, he starts asking questions like, or he'll kind of segue into certain things. Oh, hey dad, remember when you and mom were together and you remember we were doing this before? I'm like, yeah, huh? It's like, oh, okay, do you think we'll do that again? I was like, no, like it's a little bit different now, and so there's this huge gap where he lives down with his mom down in Southern California in Santa Clarita, and I'm up here, so I'm trying to manage that part of my life as well, and uh trying to, you know get guidance in biblical terms on how to deal with that, and having some comfort
Dude,
in
that's a rough one to
you
go at.
know
That's a rough
yeah,
challenge for sure.
it is. But I mean, all in all, if I step back at it, I still feel pretty blessed. They're in good hands.
Yeah.
They're in a good neighborhood. They're in a good house. They're in a good school district, and they're healthy. Um,
Wow, California has
and
good school districts?
yeah, I know, right? It's insane. It's insane. Uh, but actually, they're the feeder school to was it Saugus High School that got shot up last fall?
Really?
Yeah, they're the feeder school to that high school. So it was a little bit nerve wracking during that time, and being away,
Yeah.
it's got me kind of tripping out a little bit, man. It's like, should I go down there, or is everything all good? But school district was good. I mean, they're in good hands, so I'm happy because there's horror stories where parents struggling and trying to get custody, and they're on the side of the parent who's not in a good place.
Right, 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 right.
But yeah, man, it's all good. And then yeah, we're a blended family. I have a stepson. Uh, and it's something I worked on too. Is I strive to have a good relationship with my stepson's dad,
Mhm.
who lives in Utah. So we're actually pretty good buds.
That works.
Yeah, it's like, hey man, we're gonna be in each other's lives no matter what. Might as well
Guys
make
will get
make
along.
yeah, might as well make it a good time.
Yeah.
So nah, dude, he's good people. Uh, and yeah, so yeah, man, that's family in a nutshell for me.
Well, that makes 110% sense. Like I said, I'm absolutely on board with every point that you were making. So it's nice to know that, like, a I must be on the right track, because if coach says so, then it's relevant to
Coach
coach.
says so.
So, and number two, it makes me more confident that, like, okay, yeah, I know what I'm talking about, at least a little bit, and there's other people out there that share that same perspective, so that's cool. Uh,
Yeah.
Speaking of perspective, though, actually, before we wrap up, there's two more things that I really want
Yeah.
to get to, and I think the rest of what we had we'll save for another podcast. But
Yeah.
there's two like big things that I wanted to touch on, and one was it's fringe, right?
Yes, sir.
Fringe athletics. Can you tell me a little bit more about, or our listeners rather, about fringe, and then I want to talk about what you put down for mindset as well.
Well, okay. So Fringe Athletics I created 6 years ago, and it's about this mentality and mindset of realizing where growth happens, and that's going to be at the edges of your comfort zone, right? And the more you can stretch out your comfort zone at these edges, the more you'll be able to learn, the more you learn about yourself, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of expand your mindset. And and Fringe is was derived from my coaching in the CrossFit community, in the CrossFit world. So a lot of my coaching philosophy in the physical aspect is CrossFit. It's just one perspective in fitness to me, and made sense on how and why functional training, um, CrossFit style makes sense to me, and how I see it making sense to everyone else. Um, I see it as something that everyone can do. It can be for anyone and everyone, but it's also uh, it takes a certain, I guess, personality to be successful with it. I think. Um, so it can work for anybody, but will everybody take it on? No, obviously not. And I'm totally okay with that. Um, and then you were saying too something about mindset.
Yeah, so like what you had down for mindset, like I think
Oh, the 120-80-0.
yeah, because like I think that speaks a lot, at least right now, for a number of different reasons. Like, we're in the most bizarre time of our lifetime, right?
Oh, yeah,
And so, talking about motivation, resilience, and then, wisdom, virtuosity, and then ultimately how joy comes out of all that. Like, I think that's extremely important to talk about, and I think that, um, I, I think that's kind of almost like the core of what, when I had the idea of even starting this podcast, what I kind of wanted it to be around. Like,
oh, got it. Okay.
discussions, open discussions where, we can have opposing ideas and not worry about having to, attack each other and like put each other down, and just have like a real like intellectual conversation, and
Yeah.
how we can find, joy and relationship with, with differing opinions and ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. So this whole percentage ratio, the 120-80-0, I kind of derived from Tim Ferriss. If you guys don't know who Tim Ferriss is, I highly recommend looking this guy up. He's absolutely brilliant, I think, in my opinion, and I learned a lot of mindset stuff from him. So everyone's heard the 80-20, especially in the nutrition world, right? Eat
Mhm.
well for 80%, and then you get your cheat days for 20%. This is in the mindset uh, interface, uh, and give 100%. And so this speaks to expectations that you were saying. If you expect other people to do certain ways to keep you happy, you're in for one hell of a ride and a huge disappointment.
Right.
and and this also for me applies to my marriage and in my relationship with my wife. Is I will always give 100%. It's not 50-50. And for one, I don't think it's fair, right? So you give 100%, you don't expect anything, you don't hold on to anything. Because at the end of the day, if you give yourself 100%, whether this is at your job, even at a job that you don't like, you give 100% to your spouse, your partner, your friend, coworker, whatever. If they end up disappointing you or falling short of whatever it is, you don't end up falling into a pit where you're sad, disappointed, angry. Because at the end of the day, you gave your 100%. And if they didn't give you your 100%, I can still sleep well at night because you know what? I did it in my best God given ability to love them and perform for them and give them and make them happy. And that's enough because I rely on myself on how I want to toggle these switches or these knobs on when I get angry, how how much I get angry, or on the other spectrum, how happy I feel and whatnot. So for me, always give 100% because that adds value to your life and it just makes other people want to trust you. And I think that's pretty important in the community sense, right?
Absolutely.
And then the 2080. So this is more specifically from Tim Ferriss, where you discern the 20% of skills and work that's needed to do 80% of the work. So it's about efficiency, right? Work harder. I mean, sorry, work smarter, not harder type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you discern that 20% of skills, knowledge, whatever it is, experience that can produce 80% of the work. It's not about, and it's not saying like only do 80% quality. Again, give 100% quality. But I think people, especially these days, people are fishing so much to do 100% that they get stuck in circles chasing their own tail.
Oh my gosh, like that's literally me.
Right?
And
And
that's
that's everything.
yeah,
And I think that's in everything. And so because this also helps people either individually or in a group setting in a community how to solve problems and move forward. Um, I was just watching this show. It was a war show. It was a movie. I forget what movie it was, but it was about Marines, right? And they were saying like, "Hey, look, um, you're my you're my commanding officer, and myself and your men will follow you whether you go left or right, but just make a decision. We rise together, we fall together, but we got to move forward. We got to get out of here. It's a hot zone. We're going to get killed here, but you just got to move, right? So it's not perfect, but hey, discern 20%, produce 80%, and that'll move you to the next step, which is the zero part. And you start over that circus, the whole cycle again. Give 100%, train, whatever, gather information, um, get mentorship, whatever it is, and then discern the 20%, produce 80%, and it's just that trickle down effect. And you can always come back and add stuff to it and whatnot. But essentially, that's kind of what my golden ratios are. Give 100%, discern 20% to produce 80% of the work, and then move to the next step. Gotta
that's how you
keep
can make
moving
like
forward.
significant progress in whatever you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. And I'm writing a book right now, right? And it's dude, you just got to start with a rough draft, get all your thoughts on paper, and then you come back to the beginning again and you make your changes along the way. Because otherwise, if I'm trying to make a perfect chapter, oh man, like this book's not going to go anywhere.
No, honestly, like I can definitely speak to that because like when it came to this podcast, like um so I asked Devin Struthers, who was the first episode that I did, um, if he would help, if he would do an episode with me, and if I could pick his brain, right? And what the interesting thing was, I can't remember. I think I did it like the day before we did the podcast together. Um, I'd put a bunch of stuff on paper. It took me forever to find the name that really like I wanted and stuff like that. And I was getting really hung up on that and all these like
Uh-huh.
little finer details. And I was trying to do research and I was trying to you know gather resources, and like it was just it was very overwhelming, right? And so
Uh-huh.
I really hadn't made any sort of progress. But like I killed, like the day before I did the episode with him, I killed like seven like big things. Like I started building my website, I got my social media
Nice.
set up, like I got
Heck yeah.
my recording software for the podcast, I got my host set up, like I got all these things that like literally were the only things that I really needed to like step off the diving board and like get swimming, right? And
Right.
so what all that was left was really just, hey, just record a podcast,
Yeah.
record the
Yeah.
conversation and just do it. And honestly, like without like his um like kind of like motivating demeanor and like his help and his inspiration, like I probably wouldn't have started like I did right now. And like I did that podcast on April 5th, I think. So it's been a
Uh-huh.
while to get, and like,
Right.
life. This isn't unfortunately my full-time job, but
Yeah.
trying to get back to it. And now you and me are doing this one, and then you and I are doing one tomorrow. And
Yeah.
like, that's it. After that, like we launched the cast. So,
Yeah. No,
I
I see. I
totally
think
get
that's
that.
the perfect representation of this 120-80-0, right? So you're giving it your 100%, and your 100% is a sliding scale because this is obviously not your full time job, So it's like if 30 minutes uh, in one day or in one week is your 100% that you can give to this podcast, dude, you just gave your 100%.
Right,
And you discern 20%, which is I need a mic and a computer. I don't have a studio level mic. I don't have lights. I don't have servers. I don't have this and that. But it's getting you 80% of the job done,
right.
right? And then tomorrow, move to the next step. You start over at zero. It's a whole new podcast. So it's something I've kind of learned in life as I move on, and what makes people progress, and these are all things that I've looked at in successful people. And back to Tim Ferriss, have you know Tim Ferriss, right?
Yeah, I've definitely heard of him. I'm pretty
Have
sure
you
I follow him on some social media.
Yeah, have you seen do you ever watch his web series? It was a 10 episode show.
I haven't. No, I to
Have
on
you
it.
heard of it though?
I think so. I'm sure that some of those things have popped up in one of my feeds, or more than one or whatever. But like I have a very short attention span, so like
Oh,
I'm the
okay.
headline guy. If the headline doesn't grab me, I'm probably not clicking on it. And usually the headline tells me everything I need to know about the article, whether it's garbage or not, and then I move
Oh
on.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
no, I get it. But
Finding
dude,
that time to sit down is
uh-huh.
a different story.
It's incredible. It definitely grabbed my attention. So the premise of his 10 episode series was he picked a certain task. He gives himself a deadline, 7 days, to learn a new skill. And his skin in the game was on day 7, he did something big. So, for example, he wanted to learn a new language in 7 days. And his skin in the game was a live interview on television speaking that language in
Wow.
in a major broadcast station. So, which was had a personal affinity to me because he wanted to learn Tagalog, which is the Philippine national language.
Uh huh.
So he immersed himself culturally, lived with a Filipino family in, I think, San Diego, either San Diego or somewhere in Los Angeles. Ate the food, lived in the house for 7 days, learned the language, and then on the seventh day had a live interview on national television worldwide because this was broadcasted in the Philippines to speak the language. Now, it wasn't the whole interview in Tagalog, but there were certain parts where he had to perform the language. It's amazing. And then this might actually speak more towards you was he wanted to learn an instrument. It was the drums specifically, and his skin in the game was after 7 days he actually performed live on stage with it was some famous band live on stage with hundreds of thousands of people watching.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
crazy.
that's what he was saying. His approach to learning new things was look at the whole situation, give your 100%, right? But discern the 20% of the skills and knowledge to produce 80%. Like that interview, he didn't have to perform the whole interview in Tagalog, or he didn't have to perform the whole show on stage, but he just knew enough to get 80% to like and then he walked away learning a freaking lifelong skill. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm
dude,
definitely gonna have to watch that because
it
I'm
turned
a big
my
Gary V
perspective around.
fan. You know Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
heck yeah.
So like,
That guy's savage.
dude, that guy, Savage is right. Like that guy
Dude,
has made me feel like the lowest of my lows and the highest of my highs. Like I get like, yeah, dude, I like Gary V. So if like that kind of level of like motivation, like that definitely fire the kind of stuff that fires me up for sure.
oh, dude, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And yeah, and then moving down my list, resilience, and I think being a resilient person. There's a lot of negative in this life, and I think biblical terms for the most part, like us human beings, we're I guess we're naturally going to make mistakes and disappoint people, and some will say like people are just purely evil in some way, shape, or form. But I think to be resilient, we have to be that Brita filter. I say we got to be the filter of good news. So like, take all the bad stuff. You hear the bad news, brush it off your shoulder. You don't have to. And I think it's really prevalent in social media. Is they'll get stuff. People will see stuff that pisses them off, right? And what do? They repost it and saying, "Oh, this thing pisses me off. I can't believe people get away doing this stuff." Well, I think that sharing, saying how pissed off you are because this person gets away with doing stuff, well, you just kind of enabled them to keep doing stuff because it's now you're sharing some bad ideas that people can go ahead and do. You know what I
Right,
mean?
exactly.
So it's like be the filter of good news, like be the filter of bad news. Where okay, cool, it's not a good idea. I'm not even gonna say I'm not gonna go on social media saying, oh, this pissed me off. It's like it's not gonna go anywhere. It doesn't really solve any problems.
Yeah, I don't
And
think the problem with social media, and this is probably one we'll dive into more a little deeper because this is like this is a big deal right now. But
yeah,
the whole social media thing, which I think there's a big lack of people capturing their thoughts and their ideas and their actions and evaluating them. Like we're so gut reaction nowadays. We're so like impulsive with what we say and what we do and like, how we interact within those emotions and ideas and feelings and stuff with the world around us and I don't think for the vast majority people take into account exactly what you're saying. Like, what is this doing by me reposting this negative thing? Right?
yeah,
Is it helping people? Like, am I feeling like I'm, doing a service to my community or to society by sharing this with everybody so everybody can look at it and like, is this really helping? What is this actually doing?
right.
Right?
It's just that whole mob mentality thing.
Right. Nobody's asking themselves that question. Realistically, in my opinion, my worthless opinion is we all want attention. We all want everybody to be like, "Hey, look at me. This is what I'm
Right.
doing." And, it's just like that's why we're so into, selfies and like posting
Yeah.
every little thing. Like, hey, it's cool if you're posting your thoughts and you want to share that with the world and everything like that. But there's got to be some sort of plan that you have in sharing that like I'm not sharing every little detail of my life with the entire world because one, nobody freaking cares.
No.
Like, so, like who knows who's going to actually listen to these episodes. I have no expectation that this is going to be go anywhere. This is just
Right.
my chance to talk with some cool people and like give
Yeah.
somebody the opportunity that they might not have to share something that they're into or a project that they're working on or whatever. um but nobody really cares about what you have to say and
Right.
in a general respect, and so you don't need to share everything. You don't need to, you don't need this kind of social media attention, to get a like or whatever. Like I understand like the thrill, like, oh, somebody's interested. Everybody wants attention and you know to feel like they're interesting and like there's something about them that is unique and cool. don't forget
Right.
we're actually not that unique. Everybody's the same. We all bleed the same color.
Yeah.
We all have the same parts.
Yeah.
And
Right.
like, come on, like you're not that different from the next person. You have unique thoughts and
Right.
ideas, but
Yeah.
you're still the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
You're special, but you're not special, kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, now what?
Right.
I
Right.
don't
How
know.
do you
Yeah.
feel?
Exactly.
How is your posts for the whole day, however many you do, whether it's 1 or 12, at the end of the day when you lay your head on that pillow at night, where does that leave you? Like,
Right.
have you achieved greatness? Have you achieved like the social media fame that anybody can really get their hands on? Have you made an impact on yourself or anybody else for the positive? 9 times
Right.
out of 10 is probably no. You're
No.
still in the same place that when you woke up.
Right. And and just the other side of that, I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that, right? But it's just when
True.
people kind of take that where that's all they freaking focus on all day, right? It's like, okay, dude, like, it's this is there's every person's got a vanity side to them, and everybody wants to be liked by other people, like acceptance, and that's just kind of that's the nature of human beings, right?
Absolutely.
But it's like when it becomes the focus, then that's kind of like, okay, that's where the problem is, and that's where intervention needs to be taken, and it's like do a little bit of self-reflection,
Yeah.
and it kind of segues into the next point of what's your motivation in life, what's your why, and
Ooh, that's a big question, dude. That
right,
question is like
and
my favorite question ever. Like to get
right,
to know
and
somebody, like what is your why? Like the my one of my former employers played a video. Simon, is it Sinek? Sinek?
Simon Sinek, yeah,
Yes.
the golden circle,
Dude, that
yeah,
revolutionized
right,
how I looked at like business, right?
yeah,
Like
that
what
flipped my
is your
world
why?
upside down too, man.
Right.
Yeah,
What is
dude.
your why? And I was just like, shoot, I have no clue what my why. I just like I got to make money. Like that's that. I guess that's my why. Why do I do this? But
Right.
there was something so hollow in that. But
Hmm.
understanding your why is good.
Yeah, like people, what did you say? People buy a product because they believe in what you believe in,
Right.
right? And and so this term ikigai is something I learned. It was a documentary that I watched about centurions, or these people that live to over 100 years. A lot of them were in Japan,
Hmm.
and I think there was this one guy, which was actually the most fascinating out of all of them. I think he was from the UK. This dude was like 102 years old, running a marathon, and drinking a beer, and smoking cigarettes.
I'm telling you, dude. Remember when I told you that when I had my pack test, that guy,
Oh,
my crew boss, like, dude,
oh yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
wearing a 45-pound vest. He's like 6'2", and like halfway through this 45-minute walk, fast walk with this 45 pounds of extra weight on his back and having to do it in under 45 minutes. Um like he starts smoking a cigarette. I'm like, dude, I would be dying. Like, you got to be kidding me. He's totally like the most manliest guy I've ever seen. Like, so not the healthiest
Yeah,
habit, but yeah, dude, that's pretty great.
it's it's insane. And with this documentary, like they documented these people from different regions of the world, and they didn't know each other, and they found a common thing where it wasn't diet, it wasn't exercise, it wasn't whatever. It all came down to what they call ikigai, the reason. What's your reason to wake up in the morning? And one guy from I believe he was from Japan. His whole thing was wake up early in the morning to go fish, right? And this guy doesn't fish with a fishing pole, right? This guy, mind you, he's in 90s or early hundreds. This guy goes in the water and catches fish with his hands,
That's so insane, dude. I
right?
wish I was that cool.
It's yeah. So it's that why. What is your reason to wake up in the morning? And frankly, the way I interpret this too is your why or your ikigai is going to change. It may change daily, it may change weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever. But it's striving for a reason that's bigger than yourself, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, why do you wake up in the morning? Oh, so I can take selfies and do all this stuff. That's kind of just within your own ego. Like, why do you know what I'm saying? Like for the people who have kids, that's definitely bigger than themselves, right?
Right.
Uh, And so yeah, then and that's kind of, I think, a lot of, and I think a lot of people put way too much thought and energy in, like, well, I don't know what I want to do in my life, and it's just not fair, and I'm just so depressed. Like, no, it's okay. You can take it in small stages. Um, it could be like, oh, I wanna find a good decent career. Okay, in what industry? Cool. Now attack it. And Gary V. I don't know if you've heard. Oh, Crush It. Have you ever read that book by Gary Vaynerchuk?
Uh-uh.
Um, it's Don't Worry, Be Crappy, meaning you just this is pretty much exactly what we're doing right now, right? We don't have the perfect equipment. We don't have necessarily the perfect audience just yet. And it's just like, don't worry, be crappy, produce something, put it out into the public, and then see what people do. And then come out with version 2.0, and then come out with version
Right.
2.5. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So incremental uh,
Progress.
realization of what your ikigai is.
Yeah.
But I think that constant, at least the constant pursuit of what your why is, I think helps a lot in that mindset of being resilient. Because the more the more you stay negative, the more you're gonna hold yourself back. So the more you're resilient, you're gonna have to be, and then you're gonna have to find ways to just keep moving forward. Stop being perfect, right?
Yeah.
120-80-0 concept. Just do that so you keep moving forward. Um,
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting you say that is what you're saying rather is like, so my my wife is probably one of the most has one of the most highest levels of integrity that I've in a person that I've ever met. And
mhm.
like she is a major rule follower, right? And it's almost to a fault that it kind of like limits her from sometimes, not all the time, but experiencing life to the fullest. I think like some things like hold her back, and like so we were just talking the other night, and you know, she's the type of person that she is afraid of, you know, being on a cliff. She's afraid she's going to jump off.
Oh.
And it's like, you know, you have the ability to not do that, right? You know,
Right,
and it's like this
right.
weird fear. And we started talking about the difference between fear and belief, you know,
Uh-huh.
and so she was just like, I can't remember exactly what we were talking about. We were talking about just going and visiting her mom and dad, and you know, being together for Mother's Day, and you know, they're social distancing, we're social distancing, we don't go anywhere, you know, so the likelihood of us contracting something is probably pretty slim, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so we're talking about this, and she's just like, I'm just, you know, it's just hard because at work, you know, we're wearing masks all day, and you know, it's just like, well, you know, if I, you know, cut a corner here and don't wear a mask, then you know, I'm gonna stop wearing masks altogether, and then what if I, you know, get exposed? And I'm just like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, wait, not every rule out there is meant to be followed to the T. Like there's some
Right,
ridiculous things that just are not, they're not, there's no purpose, right? Like
right.
she has this thing that, you know, you can't eat popcorn until the movie starts. And it's just like, what? Like she's, and the weirdest thing is her poor mother follows this rule to the T. She's like, I still do this to this day, and I was like, why are you why are you following this advice, right?
That's
So you know,
funny.
it's little things like that and these are just like idiosyncrasies and stuff like that, like you know,
Sure, sure.
that people have and whatever, and as much as my wife is a rule follower, she's also like super flexible too, and so
Mhm.
she was like trapped in this thing, like, you know, what if I just become careless because of, you know, because I don't wear a mask if when we go see my mom and dad. And I'm like,
Mhm.
dude, number one, you're a control freak, and there's no way that you would let that happen, right? You
Right.
know, there's no way. Like there's a difference between fear and belief. You can be afraid of this, right? But
Uh-huh.
you don't
Uh-huh.
actually believe that you would let yourself go like
Right.
that, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't let
Yeah,
yourself become that
absolutely.
reckless, right? You're afraid you're going to fall off, and you feel like there's no other option. And if you get to that edge, you just have to fling yourself off. But you don't actually believe that you would do that. You would not do that, right? Like there's that big
Right.
difference. And so it just like what you were saying, it just that just made me think of it because she like gets in these like narrow lanes,
Yeah.
and she's got these like bumpers on that keep her in this thing, that keep her in that lane. And like if you just do and not worry about, you know, being crappy, you know, and you just produce something like, or you make a move, right, your movement concept, not just with body but also with just being productive, I guess. Yeah, dude, it's really interesting how the human mind works like that, how we can get trapped in these like confines, you know.
So I tie it in with wisdom, virtuosity, and joy. So wisdom, with that mindset
Absolutely.
of that 120, 80, 0, being resilient and having that motivation, that I think from my opinion, uh, that's what
Yeah.
wisdom is. Having that, knowing enough where, number one, you don't know everything, nor will you ever attain to know everything, but be finding the place where you can move forward with what you have and what you know, right? And uh, and tying it all back where having God first and foremost in your life, and then providing that safety first. You're not out killing
Hmm.
anybody or hurting anybody, right? And for me, that's what wisdom is. And then virtuosity, this is more of a, I got it from CrossFit, and it originated in the gymnastics world. So virtuosity is performing the common tasks uncommonly well,
Right.
meaning the basics, the foundational stuff. Like you attack that and you become really proficient at it, have a really good foundation, and everything else will fall into place. Um, so in context like basketball, with these kids these days, they want to do all the fancy stuff first, between the legs, spin, spin moves and all that. But if I ask them to just walk and dribble without looking down at the ground, they can't do it. So for something simple like that, they can't do such simple things. Like, how do you build a foundation where you can do more complicated things um, in relative ease versus
Hmm.
having this really steep learning curve, right? And a lot of people don't like that. It's not the sexy stuff. A lot of people want to do the muscle up or this 200-pound snatch in CrossFit, but they don't do any supportive exercise. It works with mental stuff too, goal planning and all that stuff.
Right.
And then the third thing with joy, man, you gotta have fun with what you do, bro. you gotta find you gotta find something that makes you freaking happy. Because I'll tell you what, you could be doing the things that are quote unquote right, but if they're boring to you, number one, you're not gonna last doing it, right? How many of us have tried to be on
Amen.
this diet of eating healthy food? We know it's right, but we freaking hate it, and then we just plunge right back into gaining weight, eating crappy foods, right? And it's, if you're not having fun with it,
Right.
man, it's not gonna stick. It's not worth doing it.
No, absolutely not. And see, we are our own
Hmm.
worst enemy, and a great example is me. Like I think this happened at a young age. I couldn't wait to be an adult and do what I wanted to do,
Yeah,
and
you got more
that's like the
consequences,
most
man.
that's furthest from reality of any idea. Like just because you're an adult does not mean you get to do whatever you want to do. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know where I got this silly concept, but so I've been living my life, my 37 years on this planet, waiting to be an adult. When I finally get to being an adult, and depending on your definition, um, where I get to make my own decisions, like it's like one bad decision after the next. Like it's just like really. So I'm gonna do what I
I
want because
deserve
you know
it.
what? If I want
Right.
Krispy Kreme donuts at 8:30 at night, I'm gonna have it because guess what? I have a job. I work hard. I deserve it. I'm an adult. I can do what I want to do,
But you had fun
and
though,
so I
right?
did. And I'm not. I don't regret that at all. Although it might not have been the most productive and helpful thing, but I'm just
Oh
saying, like,
man.
you know, I had one of the greatest times of my life. I was double fisting. I've never double fisted donuts before. But I was laying in bed. This is the most lazy, slobby sounding like story, but I was laying in bed watching
Right.
my TV and just double fisting two jelly donuts. Like I've never done that. And like to be able to do
And
that,
and you know what? Krispy Kreme donuts are the
and like
perfect
have
donuts to
that
do
as
that
like
with.
a life marker, like, oh yeah, remember that time where you double fisted jelly
Yeah,
donuts
dude.
in bed
I
watching TV, like
remember. Oh
that's a
man, dude,
milestone
we
for
had a
me.
Krispy Kreme challenge where each of it was like three of us, four of us. We each got a dozen, and whoever can eat the most in the shortest time. I think I lasted. I think 8 donuts, and then it started tasting like chemicals.
Exactly. If you're gonna fail, fail hard, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the biggest.
Uh-huh.
That's when you hit the wall. No, there's this 24-hour joint up the street from my house, like literally 3 minutes down the road. And like one night, I mean, it's probably like 10 o'clock, and this is before the pandemic hit and whatever, probably months ago. I was just like, I'm gonna go get donuts. You cool with that? Maggie's like, I guess, and she'll usually like have like one, and like I'm like, I'll dive through six of them, no problem. And so they weren't really the greatest donuts because I mean it's 10:30 at night. Who's making fresh donuts that late, right? So
Oh
I bring
god.
back for some stupid reason. I get a dozen. Like that's just like what you do. You don't get one donut. You get a dozen, right? So like $22 later, $22 worth of donuts I bring home at 10 o'clock at night, and I do my thing. Then
Divine
this
intervention.
is where the magic happened, right? The pandemic hits. I have this like itch for donuts, and I'm like, man, that would be so cool if we could have Krispy Kreme deliver. And then I was just like, something told me, Anthony, you should go online and see if they actually do that. You might be surprised. And I was just like, yeah. And I was like, that's a genius idea. I mean, what could it hurt? It's just the internet, right? And so I go on, lo and behold, Krispy Kreme delivers. And I'm stop it, like no way. And so yeah, like 8:30 at night, like I'm like I have some dude drop Krispy Kremes off on my doorstep. Like I said, I'm living my best life right now. Like I have everything delivered, right. It's like I'm the pharaoh in Egypt. Whatever I like speak, like it just comes to my door. Like it's the craziest thing, bro. I got a bow and arrow delivered to my door the other day. Like
Oh man, dude, if you ever come up here, man, you're gonna have to bring me some Krispy Kreme. They don't have that joint up here at all. They don't even have any good donut places around here.
dude, I'll hook my boy. I'll tell my boy at Postmates. I don't know his name yet, but he's usually the only one that delivers to my place. I'll tell him, dude, make a trip to Oregon, put it on my tab. You got to go see my boy Jeff.
It's only a 10-hour drive. You're
It's
good,
only
bro.
bro, you'll get compensated. I promise, man. But Jeff needs donuts.
Oh man, yeah, that's one thing. I do miss the food down there, though. That's for sure. Southern California, what has is
Really?
is food. Yeah, man.
So we
Yeah,
had this place in Marietta that was like seriously to date one of the best Mexican restaurants I've ever eaten at. Their carne asada burritos were hands down like I mean amazing. And
nice.
it's the type of restaurant that spoils you for all of other types of restaurants in that same like kind of niche. And
Uh huh.
you would think like Marietta is not like culturally like big Hispanic.
Diverse.
Yeah, it's a lot of just like transplants from like San Diego,
Oh
Orange
right.
County and stuff like that. So it's predominantly a white neighborhood, right?
Uh huh.
But Orange County really diverse. So you would think in this small bubble that I live in, as many Mexican restaurants that there are, the best one that we've come across is like Rubio's. Even like
Oh, no way.
even
Hey, you know what?
the
I'm not gonna knock Rubio's, dude. I like Rubio's.
dude,
They have some good foods.
their Lingostino or whatever burrito, like,
Uh-huh.
come on now.
The
Like,
bomb.
yeah. So, um, so yeah, Maggie and I, when we moved here, we were like, dude, we're gonna find an amazing Mexican restaurant. We're gonna find our place, and that's where we're going to hit up. We missed Tacos Tijuana, I think it was what it was called. Um,
Mhm.
Missed it so much, and we barely have found something that's comparable. And it's
Yeah.
it's like a freaking mystery. We cannot find like a legitimate, like amazing restaurant that equals to that one. And so you
Nice.
talk about having good food down here. Like uh I haven't been too many other places. I think I lead kind of a sheltered life, so not sure, not hip on other state cuisines, but we do have a variety down here, I can say that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. I guess one thing that SoCal has, but it's all good. It's all good. It's good to visit at least.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, Jeff, I want to make sure that people know where they can find out more about you and what you're doing. So, you have the floor. Tell people where they can find out more about Fringe Athletics and all the other projects, your book that you're working on. Like, have at it. Let people know.
Oh man. All right. So
Do we
I
need to
got a
make
website.
another podcast about just that? Is that is
Yeah, I know, right? I'm so scatterbrained. I like, yeah, I got my life together. Not really. No, I don't. So I do have a website. It's Fringe Athletics, and it's Fringe spelled FRINJ Athletics. That's plural.com. A lot of my information is over there. Even my biography, if anyone's interested on what I've done with my life. But that's about it. And then I'm on Instagram. I think, dude, I don't even know my own handle. Coach JQ. I think that's Coach.JQ. Let me go ahead and uh, verify it. Yep,
look that up.
Coach.JQ is me on Instagram. That's about pretty much the gist of where I post most of my stuff. My Facebook is super private. I don't think people can search me. Um, and if people do find my profile, it's like it doesn't really show anything.
And like Coach
And
JQ is also on Facebook too. Like you got your personal one in that one, right?
oh yeah, yeah, I do have a blog page or whatever you call it, but it's just a landing page really for Facebook platform
Mm,
because whatever I post on Instagram,
goes
it
to there.
yeah it posts on there. So my private stuff, yeah, I mean, I share a lot of like silly and really political stuff, just not for everyone's flavor, and that's I guess I'm entitled to have my own opinions and deep rooted ones and controversial ones. So that's for me.
I'm pretty sure that we'll have probably some of those episodes. I'm definitely looking forward to finding somebody who is level-minded that completely disagrees with everything that I believe and my perspective. I'm looking forward to that conversation, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm always up for a good conversation, and I think the world needs to hear some good conversation from different sides and not kill each other.
Absolutely. Like it's cool
You
that
know,
you believe that and I believe this and we don't disagree or whatever, but like
yeah. Now let's like grab
teaching
a beer together, take a
exactly,
shot.
yeah, like
It's all
honestly,
good.
like let's teach everybody else how we should be communicating with each other instead of just
Yeah,
tearing each other apart.
absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, cool, man. Well, I think this is the start of a wonderful relationship. I really appreciate you coming on today and doing this podcast with me. We probably are getting close to the 3 hour mark. So
Yeah.
who knows who's
And
going
I
to
think my wife feels it too.
listen? I have my honeydew list that I got to get on. I'm sure, but again, Jeff, I know you said it was an honor for you. It's definitely an honor for me, brother. I really appreciate you doing this, going on this journey with me, and being a guest today, and going through this grueling process of podcasting. So thank you for coming on. Everybody, if you want some like solid wisdom from a good guy, go check out Fringe Athletics and what Coach is all about. Until next time, we'll catch y'all later. Have
Oh
a good one.
man. Thanks guys. Yeah, thank you, man. Definitely an honor, and the respect is mutual. I look forward to everything that's going to be unfolding for us, man.
Absolute.
The only expectation I have is for us to keep um, have good conversations and again, the most exciting part about this is you can go anywhere, dude.
Absolutely, the freedom of movement. I think that's going to be a good code to live by. The freedom of movement.
Hey, I think it speaks to a thing that's pretty relevant in these days of lockdown where people are starting to question their freedoms, huh?
Absolute, 100%, 100%.
Yeah. All
All right,
right.
guys,
Thanks, guys.
have a good one. We'll see you next time.